Please come to order. A quorum, 175 residents is present. With your permission, we will waive the reading of the constable's return of the warrant. Welcome to Dover's 2013 annual town meeting. While you are getting to your seat, a few preliminaries. The fire chief reminds us that there is no smoking in the building and no sitting in the aisles or on the stairs. Please turn off your cell phones and other devices so that we can all fully concentrate on the business at hand. 2 years ago, we had problems with our PA system because of interactions with cell phones. Please place your cell phones in airplane mode or turn it off. I'm turning mine off. Throughout the auditorium tonight, and as you enter the building, you saw 20 or so residents with name tags and orange bibs on. These individuals have been designated by the town clerk to help ensure the smooth running of tonight's meeting. They wear many hats: checkers, counters, registrars, constables, etc. I have asked the town clerk to give each worker an orange bib to wear so that it will be obvious to everyone in the room who should be in the aisles during a standing count and who should not. As the evening progresses, please follow their instructions and give them your attention as they assist in counting our votes. We thank you all for your willingness to work with them tonight. In addition, we have several Boy Scouts who are with us tonight, serving as pages: Christopher Devine, Brian Mitchell, Zach Nagady, Max Peterson, and Mr. Novich. These pages will be responsible for bringing a microphone to anyone in the audience who has been recognized by the moderator. We have 2 assistant town moderators tonight. David Havlin will be moderating the discussion of Article 12 tonight due to a conflict of interest on my part. In addition, Paul White is also serving as an assistant moderator and will be serving in the cafeteria annex if necessary because of strong attendance tonight. Non-voters and non-residents are welcome to attend our town meeting, but to ensure that they are not involved in the counting, I have asked the registrars to give visitors a name tag indicating their non-voting status. They should be seated in the area designated to my left or in a designated area in the annex. Our guests tonight include State Representative Denise Garlick. Thank you, Denise, for your service to Dover. As a reminder, you must be recognized by the moderator before speaking. Please raise your hand and I will try to scan the audience so that various locations are equally recognized. The bright lights hamper my ability to see in the rear of the auditorium, but I will try. We are being televised live. If you are recognized to speak, please either proceed to a microphone or wait for a page to bring one to you. Please identify yourself as well as your street address. Hold the microphone close to your mouth and speak directly into it. The power switch will already be turned on. Some introductions. I'm Jim Repetti, the moderator for the town of Dover. In that role, I will oversee tonight's proceedings. On your left, my right, we have Bill Leahy, Town Council, Dave Havlin, Assistant Town Moderator, Barry Clough, Town Clerk, James Dawley, Chair of the Board of Selectmen, Carol Lipson, a member of the Board of Selectmen, and David Ramsey, Town Administrator. On your right, my left, we have the Warrant Committee: Douglas Lawrence, Maureen Arca, Rich Forte, James Stewart, Andy Wow, Chair, John Cohn, Kathy Gilbody, Bob Cox, and Brooks Gerner. In addition, the other assistant town moderator, Paul White, is in the cafeteria. A few words on procedure and tradition. We conduct our town meeting according to a tradition peculiar to New England town meetings that has evolved through a combination of custom, statute, and judicial interpretation. The guide that we use is a volume called Town Meeting Time. compiled and updated by a committee of the Massachusetts Moderators Association. Although similar to Robert's rules, this volume varies from the strict guidance for parliamentary bodies that are contained in Robert's rules. While Robert's rules is a useful reference, it does not govern our meeting. Although our tradition does embody numerous thou shalts and thou shalt nots, much is left to local custom in the moderator's discretion. At the end of the day, whether you have won or lost on a particular issue, it is very important that you feel that the process has been fair and consistent with our tradition. Important because this really is the glue that holds this most democratic form of governance together. It is a fragile thing, this town meeting tradition. Too many rules, and it will become a game only lawyers can play. Too loose, and it becomes anarchy. I would like to provide a brief explanation of some common town meeting terms and bylaws. Residents have found this helpful in the past, so tonight I would like to do so again. The main motion. The main motion is what is stated by the warrant committee at the beginning of the consideration of an article, or by a citizen in the case of an article sponsored by a citizen. Most motions require a majority vote to pass, but some will need a 2/3 vote. The quantum of the vote is based on the subject matter of the motion. I will let you know before the vote is taken which quorum is required. Amendment to the main motion. An amendment to the main motion must be discussed and voted on before returning to the main motion. It requires a majority vote to amend any motion. If a voter desires to amend a motion, I will require that the amendment be put in writing and delivered to the podium at the time it is put on the floor. Move the question. This motion is often yelled out by a bored, frustrated town meeting attendee who just wants to get on with their vote on a particular article. I will not recognize that motion, or any other for that matter, which is yelled out. You must first be recognized by the moderator. The motion must be seconded. At that point, there is no debate allowed on the motion to move the question, and we will vote immediately. The motion to move the question requires a 2/3 vote to pass. Assuming that motion passes, the meeting will move directly to the vote of the motion, which was previously before it. There will be no more debate on the main motion. Reconsider a motion. Dover's bylaws state that if a reconsideration motion is made within 30 minutes of the vote on the motion to be reconsidered, only a simple majority is required to pass the motion to reconsider. Otherwise, this motion requires a 2/3 vote to pass. A lesson learned from those with experience with reconsideration motions. Do not leave the town meeting until it has been adjourned. Your favorite article is always at risk for reconsideration. Motion to dissolve. Finally, a motion to dissolve takes privilege over all other motions, is debatable, and requires a majority vote. As a rule, we use voice votes, and this is consistent with the tradition of town meeting being an open process. If I cannot call the vote, I will ask for a show of hands. And if that does not suffice, we will ask for a standing vote. If 7 or more voters immediately question the moderator's call on a voice vote, then I will be required to ask for a standing vote. Hopefully I have not confused you with this quick review. I'm here to help you accomplish, within certain parameters, the serious business of the town. If you are confused at any point during the meeting, please ask for clarification. Before each article, I will state the subject matter of the article and then recognize a member of the warrant committee to make a motion on the article. The full text of each of these articles is printed in the blue book, and in most cases, the warrant committee has included a summary of their position on the article. Tonight, I have asked the warrant committee members to keep their initial remarks regarding an article to a minimum. I am assuming that every voter in attendance has read the blue book and understands why the warrant committee voted the way they did. If you did not bring your blue book with you tonight, please raise your hand and Pages will bring you a copy. We have some over here. A word about brevity. Tonight I will require the presenters of articles to limit their presentation to no more than 10 minutes. During the discussion of these articles, I will try to maintain a balance between moving the agenda along and ensuring that we all have something to contribute to the discussion. We have a lot to cover tonight. I encourage brevity and remind speakers that the longer and more complex your presentation, the greater the chance that you will confuse rather than persuade. Hopefully, all who wish to will have the opportunity to speak and will reach a vote without someone having to move the question out of boredom or frustration. It would be very nice if we are able to complete our business tonight so that we do not have to continue this meeting until tomorrow night. A couple more reminders. If I am conducting a standing count, it is very important that you remain in your seat, either sitting or standing, while the vote is being counted. I will let you know when it is time to sit down or stand up to be counted. Do not move around the hall during the counting procedure. I intend to halt the counting if I see anyone not wearing an orange bib in an aisle during a standing count. In order to ensure a correct count, each section of the auditorium is counted by 2 people. Please pay attention to the counter for your section. In a particularly crowded section, like the front center, he or she will be asking each row to sit down after it has been counted. The counters of each section then confer and agree on a number before it is recorded by the supervisor. The supervisors agree on the total count and subsequently bring it to the podium where I double-check the total vote count. I am confident that this procedure ensures a correct vote count. Finally, I ask that the attendees tonight remember that emotions and personalities should be left at the door of town meeting. I will not tolerate emotional outbursts or accusations directed toward individuals or groups. Disagreement is the essence of democracy. It would be a very boring town meeting if we agreed about everything. But it is imperative that we disagree without being disagreeable. Let us honor the memory of all those who sacrificed to give us this great gift of democracy by conducting ourselves in a professional manner. Are there any questions about procedure? Before we proceed to the articles of the warrant, would you please join me in expressing our thanks to the scores of elected and appointed volunteers who comprise our town government, as well as the able employees who ensure the smooth running of the town. Democracy is a wonderful prize that has been preserved through the sacrifice and efforts of millions of citizens. Let us take a moment to silently recognize those who are fighting to protect our freedom and putting themselves in harm's way at this very moment in service of our country. And let us also silently recognize the victims of the Boston Marathon attack and the first responders who so bravely aided them and protected all of us. Thank you, and may God bless America. Before we begin tonight's proceedings, it is customary to recognize the chairman of the Warrant Committee for a few remarks. Mr. Wow.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Warrant Committee began its preparation for tonight's meeting in September of 2012. At that time, the Warrant Committee, in conjunction with the Personnel Board and the Board of Selectmen, established increases for non-union personnel for the upcoming year. The Warrant Committee also established its expectation for the budgets for all town departments. In October 2012, the Warrant Committee issued its guidance and directed all departments to submit level service budgets for FY14. In those instances where a particular department believed that it required more than level services, the Warrant Committee directed that department to submit independent information documenting the basis for its request. Since issuing our guidance letter, the Warrant Committee has met with all of the departments in town and the Regional School Committee in an effort to review and understand the submitted budgets and, where necessary, to require departments to submit additional information to justify particular requests. We are pleased to present to you tonight a balanced budget that does not require an operating override. On behalf of the Warrant Committee, I would like to thank all of the town departments, boards, committees, and employees with whom we met. All gave freely of their time, and we greatly appreciate their cooperation in our review of proposed FY14 budgets. I would also like to thank all the employees who work at the townhouse who helped us with our work. I would also like to thank the Board of Selectmen for their support of the Warrant Committee, in particular Jim Dawley, who served as the Board of Selectmen's liaison to the Warrant Committee and who attended all of our meetings. Finally, I would like to thank each member of the Warrant Committee for their commitment and dedication in reviewing departmental budgets, drafting write-ups for the Blue Book, and ensuring that all citizens receive the Blue Book in a timely fashion prior to town meeting. At this time, James Stewart is going to give a brief overview of the costs to Dover and why the budget costs what it does.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. On behalf of the Warrant Committee, as Andy said, I'm going to give an overview of this year's proposed budget, but the details are all in the Blue Book. The numbers are a little small, but I'll read them out. And again, they are in the Blue Book. Projected fiscal year 14, the total expenditures are $33.4 million. Article 4, and I'll go over these numbers again, but just a brief summary here. Article 4 portion is $31.8 million. It's up 3.5%. Article 5 is $646,000. Special articles this year are $95,000. The use of free cash this year is $1.6 million, which is down from the $1.997 or $1.998 million last year. Tax levy is up to $26.7 million, up 3.8%, and the new growth estimate is $250,000, which is down again. Next slide. This is a summary of the components of the budget. As you can see, the operating budget, Article 4, is the bulk of the budget at about 90%. Debt service, which is part of Article 4, is about 5%, and followed by smaller items such as capital items, reserve fund, miscellaneous, and the snow and ice deficit. Next slide. This is a summary of the Article 4 spending. And as you can see, the big increases are for the schools. It's up about $1 million. Debt and interest is down about $145,000. And insurance and pensions is up about $61,000. Next slide, please. For Article 4, as we saw, the schools are the bulk. Chickering is about 28.7%. Regional schools about 29%. Debt is about 7%. This is all somewhat consistent with previous years. All told, in the way that it's broken out, the schools are about 58% of the budget of Article 4. As you can see, insurance and pensions is a fairly big component of about 10%. Next slide. In previous years, there's been a question about the fully loaded cost of the schools, because for Chickering, our local elementary school, the insurance and pensions are paid out of the town budget, not out of the school budget. And it's helpful to understand what the full cost of the schools are. And that works out to about 66% of the total budget is spent of Article 4 expenditures for the schools, if you take into account the pensions and insurance versus what you saw on the previous slide of about 57%. This number, this percentage, excludes reimbursement for special education circuit breaker and end-of-year budget turnbacks due to unspent funds. And also understand that a large portion of this number is for debt repayment, which is not really a spending. It's actually going to reduce the town's debt. Next slide, please. This is a summary of where some of the increases in Article 4 are, and just looking at different years. So it's the green is this current year. You can see that local schools, their budget is up 8.9%, a fairly big number, and largely that's driven by special education and out-of-district expenses rather than regular education. Other big increases are in sort of the other miscellaneous items. Insurance and pensions is up only about 1.9%. Next slide, please. Looking at the other side of the equation, which is the estimated revenue for the town, tax levies are about 80% of where our revenue comes from. And you can see the other items, local receipts, the use of free cash, which I'll explain in a little bit, is about 5% of the total. Next slide, please. And this is, again, is where some of the increases are. The tax levy is up by about 3.8% for this proposed budget. Local receipts are estimated to be down about 9%. Debt exclusion, so the debt numbers are estimated to be down a little bit. Next slide, please. This slide shows a pie chart with the revenue versus the expenses and the budget gap. This is essentially the use of free cash at currently our proposed budget anticipates using $1.6 million of free cash to close the budget gap. Next slide, please. And this is a slide which shows the use of free cash as a percentage of expenses each year going back to 2006. And it's roughly in the 5% range. Typically, that's a guideline that we try to keep to, not going too much greater or less than that in terms of the use of free cash as a percentage of our expenses. And this year, it's at 4.9%. And next slide, please. And that's it. These slides will be available on the website if anybody wishes to look at them further and discuss them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, it is customary to recognize the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Dawley.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Is this on? Is this on? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, we would like to thank you all for attending this year's town meeting. The warrant articles before you are the result of thousands of hours of work by your fellow citizens who volunteer as appointed or elected officials on numerous boards and committees, and the dedicated work by our town employees. Thank you all who help govern Dover. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Joe Melican, who recently stepped down as a selectman. Joe has served the town of Dover as an elected official and an appointed board member for the last 16 years, serving as a selectman on the warrant committee and the MBTA advisory board, to name a few. Dover is a better place because of Joe's hard work and dedication. A true gentleman, his leadership will be missed. With Joe's resignation, the town will hold a special election to fill the remaining year of his 3-year term. The election day is Tuesday, June 25th, which is also the day of the statewide special election to fill the United States Senate seat vacated by Senator Kerry. I would also like to remind everyone of the upcoming town elections on Monday, May 20th, as noted in the Blue Book, Article 24. The article lists the open elected office positions. What is not listed, but will be on the ballot, is the non-binding ballot question regarding the town's desire for proposed athletic fields at Carroll Park. I urge our townspeople to either continue to participate, or if you haven't participated, step forward and volunteer your time, or get involved in one of the many issues currently at hand by sharing your opinion. Lastly, as I have said, debate is a key component to our process in democracy. Civil dialogue during the debate shows respect and the demonstrated civility, excuse my tongue this morning, eases the path that invites others to join the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dawley. Before we move to the articles of the warrant, it is customary to again recognize the chairman of the warrant committee for a motion governing the conduct of the meeting. Mr. Waugh.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the following rule be adopted for the conduct of this meeting. Any amendment to a main motion that would increase an appropriation must contain a provision for the source of the funds for the increase such that the total amount to be raised and appropriated at the meeting will not be increased.
Second.
Do I hear a second, Mr. Cohn? Thank you. Okay, the motion has been made that any amendment that would increase an appropriation must contain a provision for the source of funds for that increase. Any discussion? Okay, this is a majority vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we now move to Article 1.
You can vote.
Which pertains to the reading of annual reports.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the reading of the various reports by the town clerk be waived and that the reports be accepted and placed on file.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Cohn, Mr. Waugh has made the motion. Mr. Cohn has seconded that we waive the reading of the reports. Any discussion? Yes, sir. Wait for the page, please. Oh, would you like to come up? Sure. Name and address, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Repetti. I think I understand the process. Gerald Clark, Valley Road. Mr. Moderator, if you would allow me, I'd like to read into the record the applicable Massachusetts general laws relative to town reports and in specific, the Park and Rec Commission. Title 7, Chapter 45, Public Parks, Playgrounds, and Public Domain, Section 9, Annual Reports of Park Commissioners. Such boards shall make reports of their respective doings and detailed statements of all receipts, expenditures, and liabilities for the preceding year in towns at the annual meetings and at other times as the towns direct. Be glad to proffer to town council a copy of the relevant legislation if he's not familiar with it. That being the case, Mr. Moderator, I would say to you that the town not wishing to be in violation of Massachusetts general laws, however inconsequential some people may think them, the pages of 179 to 183, which correspond to the Park and Rec Commission report, after careful perusal, absolutely lack any sums of monies and are totally deficient and are non-compliant with the applicable Massachusetts general laws statute and therefore should be deemed non-acceptable. Such corrections as are necessary should be submitted to the town before such report is accepted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark. Are you making a motion, Mr. Clark? Do you wish to amend the motion that was made?
I would move that the town, in compliance with Massachusetts General Laws, Title 7, Chapter 45, Section 9, which mandates the publication of all financial data relevant to the operation of Park and Rec, should result in our rejection of the report of the Park and Rec Commission in this report and require a resubmittal so that we, the town, are not in violation of said statute.
Mr. Clark, could you put that in writing for the town clerk, please? We have paper. Okay, while Mr. Clark is writing his motion to amend, we have to consider the motion to amend before we can move back to the main motion. So I would like to ask if there's any discussion on Mr. Clark's motion to amend. I don't see any, no hands. Yes. Okay.
Shelley Polson, 53 Main Street. I'm curious, what happens if we accept the town report minus the Park and Rec Department?
Yeah, so let me check the council. We've been advised it doesn't have any consequences. Can I ask for a second for Mr. Clark's motion? Okay, so we have a second. Paige, could you please go second, or please raise your hand so we can identify? Okay, can I have a page up here, please? Okay, right here. Raise your hand, sir, please. Wait for the microphone, please. Raise your hand again. There. Okay.
Peter Jordan, 145 Dedham Street, Sexton.
Okay. We just have to wait for this to be in writing before we can vote on it. The vote for an amendment will be a majority vote.
So you're done with it?
Okay, let me read the motion. The motion is, I move that pursuant to Mass General Law, Title 7, Chapter 45, Section 9, the report of Parks and Recreation Committee on pages 178 to 183 of the annual report be rejected and require resubmittal to be in compliance with applicable law. Any further discussion on this motion? Again, it's a majority vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. Okay, so now we have amended the motion to exclude the pages of the Parks and Recreation report, pages 179 to 183, and we will now vote on the main motion as amended. Again, this is a majority vote. We're waiving reading of the report, except that we are not waiving that portion of the report Parks and Recreation Committee has submitted as stated in Mr. Clark's amendment. So again, a yes vote will be in favor of accepting the report other than these pages of the Parks and Recreation report. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously as amended. Thank you. Okay. Article 2, real estate tax exemptions.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town accept Section 4 of Chapter 73 of the Acts of 1986 as amended by Chapter 126 of the Acts of 1988 for the fiscal year 2014.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cohn. Is there any discussion? This allows additional real estate exemptions for disabled veterans, blind and elderly persons who meet certain qualifications. No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 3, town salaries.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the salaries recommended for elected officials of the town, as shown in the right-hand column of the warrant committee report, be called over by the moderator, and that if no objection is raised to any of them, they be approved as read.
Second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Motion has been moved by Mr. Warren, seconded by Mrs. Gurnett, that I read the salaries on page 27 of the Blue Book in Article 3.
Page
If this motion passes, I will actually read the salaries and ask you to put on hold any of those items that you object to. We will then consider individually those items for which a hold has been voiced. All items that have not been objected to will be deemed to have been approved. Any questions on this motion or any discussion on this motion? Again, this is to direct me to read the salaries. I will not actually be reading them until this motion passes. This is a majority vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I will now read the salaries. You can follow along with me on page 27 of the Blue Book. Board of Selectmen, Chairman, $200. Clerk, $150. Other member, $100. Assessor, Chairman, $400. Other members, $350. Town Clerk, $60,135. Planning Board, Chairman, $100. Other members, $50. Constables, 3, each $150. Board of Health, Chairman, $150. Other members, each $100. I did not hear any holds. Did anybody else hear any holds? Okay. This motion, therefore, has carried as made. Thank you very much. Article 4, the operating budget.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the salaries and expenses recommended by the departments, officers, boards, and committees of the town, as shown in the FY 2014 requested column in the warrant committee report, be called over by the moderator, and, if no objection is made, that the town appropriate such sums and raise such amounts from the tax levy and from other general revenues of the town, except that $10,400.36 of the appropriated, of the amount appropriated pursuant to line item 710 therein for maturing debt principal shall be transferred from the Title V receipt reserved for appropriation account.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Cohn has seconded Mr. Wah's motion. Again, this is like the prior article. If you approve this motion, I will read the budget items beginning on page 28 of the Blue Book for Article 4. If you have a question, simply say hold as I read a particular line item, and we will go back to that particular item at the end. Items for which no hold is voiced will be deemed to have been approved. This is a majority vote. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Again, this is to direct me to read the salaries. I will not actually be reading the items until this motion passes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, I will now read the operating budget items beginning on page 28 of the Blue Book. Item 301, Moderator, 0. You get what you pay for. Warrant Committee, $5,180. 122, Selectmen, salaries, $263,420.
Hold.
Thank you. Expenses, $49,976. Total, $321,796. Okay, hold also on total. 192, townhouse expenses, $63,217. 191, Whiting Road, $4,629. 193, Carroll Community Center, $118,677. Building maintenance, total, $296,753. Copy and postage, $29,000. 151, law, $190,000. 135, town accounting, total, $178,911. 141, assessor, total, $155,062. 145, treasurer, collector, total, $201,525. 155, data processing, total $127,802. 161, town clerk, total $72,485. 162, election registration, total $47,204. 175, planning board, total $68,876. Number 411, engineering, total $58,617. Protections of person and property, total $1,844,775. 299, protective agency building, $98,102. Animal control, total $28,229. 220, fire, total $431,657. 231, ambulance, total $167,571. 241, building inspector, total $71,781. 291, emergency management, total $3,604. Conservation Commission, total $63,025. 176, Board of Appeals, total $3,573. 294, care of trees, total $123,033. 295, tree committee, $2,500. Health and sanitation, number 433, garbage disposal, $18,700. 439, solid waste, total $382,893. 450, town water, total $22,304. 519, Board of Health, total $70,644. Highways and bridges, number 422, maintenance, total $663,554. Snow and ice, number 423, total $320,000. Number 424, street lighting, $11,936. Number 425, town garage, $84,303. Tarvia patching, number 428, total $250,000. Other public agencies, number 194, energy coordinator, 0. 491, cemetery, total $107,032. Number 541, Council of Aging, total $122,029. Library, total $547,632. Number 650, Parks and Recreation, total number $391,470. Unclassified services, number 152, Personnel Committee, 0. Number 178, Dover Housing Partnership, 0. Number 195, Town Report, $11,509. Number 543, Veterans, $2,000. Number 691, Historic Commission, $1,250. Number 692, Memorial Day, $2,700. Insurance, number 912, Workers' Compensation, $60,000. Number 914, Group Insurance, $2,006,503. Number 916, Medicare FICA, $147,832. Number 950, Other Insurance, $179,721. Pensions, number 911, Norfolk County Retirement, $857,028. Schools, Dover School Operating, number 600, the amount is $9,102,492. Okay. Number 601, Dover Share of the regional operating assessment and debt assessment, total $10,060,627. Number 602, Minuteman Vocational, strike that. Number 602, Minuteman Vocational, $67,530. Number 604, Norfolk County Agricultural High School, $6,000. Number 710, Maturing Debt Principal, $1,180,401. Number 751, Maturing Debt Interest, $292,000. Number 759, Bank Charges, $4,000. Okay, I heard holds with respect to, going back to page 28, the salaries under Selectmen number 122, and also for the total amount for Selectmen under number 122. And I also heard a hold with respect to, going back to page 35, number 600, the Dover School operating budget. Were there any other holds that I didn't hear? Okay. Okay, let's go back then to number 122, the Selectmen's salaries. Mr. Waugh?
Mr. Moderator, in calculating the FY 2014 salary number, the number was incorrectly calculated. The correct number should be $271,820. The total amount is accurate, as are the expenses. So I would move the salary line under item 122 be moved to $271,820.
Okay. A motion has been made to correct the amount for salaries under number 122 for Selectmen, to correct that amount so that it reads $271,820. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second?
Thank you for the second, Mr. Cohn. We will now have discussion on this motion to amend. This is a majority vote. It's simply correcting a Scribner's error. Is there any discussion on this motion to correct the amount? Okay, no discussion on this motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion to correct carries. Now, we also had a hold with respect to the total. Unanimously. It carries unanimously. Thank you, Barry. We also had a hold on the total amount for the Selectmen, number 122. And the way that we proceed is to ask for, again, a motion with respect to this amount, and then we'll open up for discussion. So I ask the person at that point who said hold to please tell us what his concerns are. Mr. Wong?
They weren't my concerns.
I'm sorry?
They weren't my concerns on the total.
Oh, okay,
Came from the
okay.
floor.
Who had the hold, please? Okay, could somebody bring him a microphone? Mr. Akins, Dr. Akins?
Carl Akins, 18 Greystone Road. My concern was that the total did not represent the sum of the two numbers which were there.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Akins. Very good. Okay, so Dr. Akins, I presume then there's no motion on your part. Okay, great, thank you. Let's proceed now to the other hold that we had, going back again to page 35. Item number 600 was the Dover School operating for $9,102,492. Who had the hold on this? Okay, gentleman in the back here with his hand up, thank you.
William Stewart, 10 Glen Street. How much of this increase is debt principal and how much is debt interest?
Who would like to, would somebody on the warrant committee like to answer that? Uh,
600. Yeah.
Would somebody like from the school committee like to answer that question? Sir, could you repeat the question?
How much of the increase, by which I mean the year-over-year increase, is due to an increase in debt repayment versus debt interest payment?
Okay, so the question is, how much of the increase shown in the blue book is 8.9%, and your question, how much of that is attributable to debt service, sir?
Debt service and principal.
Okay, debt service and principal repayment.
Mr. Repetti? Over here.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Carol.
I can't answer that question. The debt, principal, and interest are not included in the Chickering School budget. They're included in Department 710 and 751, which are on page 36.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is that, okay, again, gentlemen in the back there.
Well, then, in round numbers, what is the explanation for the large increase?
Okay, Carol, would you like to respond to that?
That's a warrant committee issue.
Okay.
The superintendent.
Anyone from the warrant committee? Or from the school committee? Okay, superintendent, thank you. Could you identify yourself, please?
Sure. Superintendent of the Dover Schools, Valerie Spriggs.
Yes, okay, go ahead.
Okay. The increase in that is primarily for an increase in the special education areas that we provide both out of district and in district. It would also probably be very helpful for you to know that those are compliance issues that we are required by law to comply with.
Okay, sir, is that satisfied? Okay.
Does it represent an increase in the number of students serviced, and if so, approximately how many?
It does reflect an increase in the number of students. However, because the services that are provided that are impacted with that, I don't have the total number. I will tell you that it varies depending upon what grade level and also whether it's out of district and whether it's in district.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we do not have a motion on this. Would anybody like to make a motion? None? Okay, so the budget is now accepted as it was amended. Thank you. Okay, on to Article 5, capital budget. Mr. Cohen.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the following sums recommended for the various capital purposes be called over by the moderator, and, if no objection is made, that the town raise and appropriate such sums unless another funding source is noted, and that any sums realized from the trade-in or auction of old equipment shall be used to reduce the cost of the acquisition of new equipment or to purchase related accessories.
Okay, second?
Second.
Mr. Stewart has second. Motion has been made and seconded. Like the prior motions, this one directs me to read over the capital budget items to see if anyone objects to a specific item. Unlike the prior two motions, I will not be reading from the blue book. Rather, I will be reading from the motion itself. The blue book at pages 37 to 47, however, follows the same order as the motion. I will read slowly so that you can follow along in the blue book. Any discussion of this motion that directs me to read the capital budget items? Okay, no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I will now read the operating budget items. If you wish to question any of the items, please say hold. Items for which there is no hold are deemed to have been approved. I will now read the specific items. Cemetery, utility vehicle, $22,825. Fire department, squad truck, $75,000. Self-contained breathing apparatus bottles, $11,000. Highway department, street sweeper, H9, $172,885. Library, shelving and furniture for children's area, $15,000. Parks and Recreation Commission, large tractor mower, 0. Department vehicle, $24,800. Refurbished Carroll Community Center gym floor, $4,200. Police Department, patrol vehicles, 2, $70,000. Radio receiver, $30,000. Mobile computer interface, $17,000. Animal control vehicle, $35,000. School committee, drainage improvement, fire road widening, $27,500. Library carpet replacement, $20,155. Sidewalk light pole upgrade to LED, $5,427. Cafeteria seating area power shades, high windows, $6,882. Technology hardware, $24,800. Technology hardware for grades 2 and 3 pilot programs, $14,000. Selectmen, townhouse roof repairs, $15,000. Library, replacement of carpeting in children's area, $10,000. Townhouse, painting of the clock tower cupola, $30,000. Townhouse, painting of the gutters and fasciae, $15,000. I heard polls with respect to Parks and Recreation, Department vehicle, $24,860, and also to refurbish the Carroll Community Center gym floor for $4,200. Could the person who asked for the hold with respect to the department vehicle please raise their hand? Okay.
Design and associated expenses for the proposed Sea Park Athletic Complex. Revolving funds were also spent on 2 insufficient traffic studies over the past 2 years, with a total of over $100,000 spent. The project does not have any approval. They will again have substantial revolving funds available this year. Rather than seeking additional funds from the town, they should use their available funds for the purchase of the department vehicle. Therefore, the item should not be approved. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rossetti, would you like to respond to that question? We have, can we have a microphone up front here? Sir, Mr. Rossetti, please raise your hand.
So it's Mike Cassetti, Capital Budget Committee, 3 Crest Drive. I don't have the complete numbers on the revolving fund, the numbers regarding that. There may be someone from Park and Rec or the Park and Rec Commission that can give us those details. I do know regarding the revolving funds that they're used, that we do try to use them as specifically for in the area that they're taken in for. So for example, Park and Rec takes in some dollars for the tennis courts. Those are intended to be used for refurbishment of tennis courts. Similarly, in Carroll School, there are some funds that are taken in from Carroll School, and the next item on there, the intent is that those funds would be used directly for that. So there may be someone from Park and Rec who can give us more of the details on the revolving funds.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rossetti. Is there somebody from Parks and Recreation who would like to respond to that?
Looks like someone way up there.
Rich Oasis, 12 Wildwood Road. This is a capital budget item, so the revolving fund is a different area that affects the programs where the money comes in. In terms of the capital budget for this department vehicle, the vehicle's a 2000 model car that we're looking to replace as a capital item for the department. Based on the expenses that have been incurred, we think it's prudent to go forward with this. It doesn't impact at all the revolving fund. It's a capital item. Thank you.
Okay. Gentleman who made the objection, sir, does that help you, or would you like to make a motion with respect to this article? Okay. All right. We had another hold with respect to refurbish the Carroll Community Center gym floor for $4,200. Could the person who asked that for that hold please raise their hand? Okay. Are you satisfied, sir? Okay. We have another hand down here.
Gerald Clark, Valley Road. Mr. Repetti, I didn't point it out on the previous series of holds, and obviously it's of no consequence there. I would point out to you as a procedural matter that you currently have no motion on the floor. You have no current authorization for the spending of these monies. You do require a motion now to authorize those fundings, because the previous motion specifically said that all funds would be authorized except where a hold had been placed. That being said, you currently have no appropriations authorized. In these two regards, you would require a motion.
Okay, point well taken, Mr. Clark. Could I have a motion with respect to the department vehicle, $24,860, and also to refurbish the Carroll Community Center for $4,200?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the sum of $24,860 for Park and Rec department vehicle and the sum of $4,200 to refurbish the Carroll Community Center gym floor be raised and appropriated, and that any sums realized from the trade-in or auction of old equipment be used to reduce the cost of acquisition of new equipment or to purchase related accessories.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cohen and a second by Mr. Stewart. Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Fleming.
Jim Fleming, Run Road. It's interesting in this department vehicle. The department has a lot of vehicles. The town has a lot of vehicles. Why are we purchasing a vehicle? Who is this for? Is it a take-home?
Question is whether this is a vehicle that's going to be taken home. I'm sorry, Mr. Fleming?
Is there no definition to why we're purchasing this vehicle?
Okay, thank you. Would somebody from Parks and Recreation like to respond to that question about the use, the intended use for the vehicle? Gentleman in the back, could I have a page in the back, please? Straight up the stairs. Right up the stairs, please. Right here.
Rich, hello? Rich Oasis.
Mike, can you turn the mic on, please?
Rich Oasis, 12 Wildwood Road. That vehicle is not used for personal use. It's to take equipment to and from the fields, move things around, football equipment, field hockey, soccer, and the like. So it's not used for personal use whatsoever, and it is currently a 2000 model.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, no further questions. The motion has been to approve the expenditures with respect to department vehicle, $24,800, and to refurbish the Carroll Community Center gym floor, $4,200. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes carry it, majority vote. Thank you. Okay, Article 6, the unemployment fund. This is Ms. Arco.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 for the purpose of funding an unemployment compensation fund as authorized by Chapter 40, Section 5E of the Massachusetts General Laws.
Okay, second?
Second.
Mr. Lawrence, a second. Motion has been made to appropriate $20,000 for the unemployment fund. Is there any discussion? Okay, this is a majority vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 7, accumulated sick leave.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for purposes of payment of accumulated sick leave for retired police officers as authorized by Chapter 375 of the Acts of 1984.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Forte, a second. Mr. Cox's motion has been moved and seconded that $10,000 be raised and appropriated for accumulated sick leave for retired police officers. Any discussion? No discussion. This is a majority vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 8, highway funds.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into contracts, apply for, accept, expend, and borrow in anticipation of any funds allocated by the Commonwealth for the construction, reconstruction, and other improvements of town roads and related infrastructure.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Gilbody has made the motion, and it's been seconded by Mrs. Arco. Basically, this motion permits the Board of Selectmen to access funds from the state that may be available for road construction and repair. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. This is a majority vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 9, revolving funds.
Mr. Moderator, I move that pursuant to the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53E and 1/2, the town authorize the use of revolving fund accounts for the following boards or departments, and that such accounts shall not exceed the amount set forth for the fiscal year 2014. Number 1, Building Department, Gas Inspector, $5,500. Plumbing Inspector, $16,900. Wiring Inspector, $22,000. In the Board of Health, Perk and Deep Hole Inspection and Permitting, $40,000. Septic Inspection and Permitting, $40,000. Well Inspection and Permitting, $15,000. Swimming Pool Inspection and Permitting, $10,000. In the Library, Materials Replacement, $5,000. And further, that the fees charged for these services be credited to the respective accounts, and that the aforementioned boards or departments be authorized to make expenditures from the respective accounts and for the respective purposes up to the amounts set forth above.
Thank you, Mr. Forte. A second?
Second.
Mr. Cox has seconded. This is a motion with respect to revolving funds. Any discussion? Okay, no discussion. This is a majority vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 10, Senior Center.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Lawrence has made a motion to dismiss. Mrs. Gilbody has seconded. Any discussion? Okay. This is again a majority vote. All those in favor of the motion to dismiss Article 19, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Article 11.
Mr. Moderator, I move to amend Section 185-52, Special Permits of the Zoning Bylaws of the Town of Dover by adding a new subsection F as follows. In accordance with Chapter 48, Section 9 of the Massachusetts General Laws, an associate member of the Planning Board shall be elected at the annual town election for a 2-year term. Any vacancy in the position shall be filled in accordance with the procedure prescribed in Chapter 41, Section 81A of the Massachusetts General Laws. The chairman of the Planning Board, when acting as special permit granting authority, may designate the associate member to sit on this board for the purposes of acting on a special permit application in the case of the absence, inability to act, or conflict of interest on the part of any member of the planning board, or in the event of a vacancy on this board. And amend Article 6, Planning Board, subsection 4-12 of Chapter 4 of the General Bylaws by adding, an associate member of the planning board shall be elected at the annual town election for a 2-year term. Any vacancy in the position shall be filled in accordance with the procedure prescribed in Chapter 41, Section 81A of the Massachusetts General Laws. The chairman of the planning board, when acting as special permit granting authority, may designate the associate member to sit on this board for the purpose of acting on a special permit application in the case of the absence, inability to act, or conflict of interest on the part of any member of the planning board, or in the event of a vacancy on this board. And authorize the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board, sitting in joint session, to appoint an associate member to serve on the Planning Board for such period of time until said office is filled pursuant to a duly called town election and the elected members duly sworn in.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Starkov. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Gernon has seconded. This is a motion to create an associate member of the planning board. It requires a 2/3 vote because it's an amendment to the zoning bylaw. And state statute requires that we hear a report from the planning board, so I'm going to call on Mr. Sorrow to make the planning board's report to the town meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mark Sarrow, Colonial Road and Planning Board Chair. Since the article took a while to read, I'll try to be very brief. Article 11 is a proposal to add an associate member to our planning board. It amends the zoning bylaw, as you can see, in 2 different places, one where the planning board is actually defined or created, the other where the planning board is named as the special permit granting authority. And what it does is it proposes to amend the bylaw to do 2 things. First, to create an associate position, and then to specify how that position will be filled. It adds 1 associate member to our currently 5-member board. The associate will be elected, not appointed, elected to a 2-year term, with vacancies filled by joint appointment of the selectmen and the planning board. And this is exactly how the current planning board members are elected to the board and how positions are filled when there are vacancies. The only difference with the associate member would be a 2-year term as opposed to a 5-year term, and the fact that the associate member would vote only in the case of a special permit being heard before the board, and only in the event that a sitting member would be unable to vote for some reason. Similar boards in town already have associate members. For example, the Conservation Commission has 7 members and 3 associates. The Zoning Board of Appeals has 3 full members and 2 associates. Those members have 3-year terms, and the associates have a 1-year term. So just like this article does, shorter terms for the associates. The reasoning for adding an associate member to the planning board is twofold. It primarily has to do with scheduling, and then also with learning curve issues that the board presents. First and foremost is scheduling, though. Adding an associate will help the board avoid some common scheduling quorum issues that we face. Applications that come to the board sometimes require special permits. These are things like equipment on cell towers or parking lots in residential districts, like we saw last year on Poisson Street with Noannet Woodlands. And those special permits require the votes of not a majority of the board, 3 votes, but rather a vote of 4 of the 5 members of the board. And for that reason, state law allows us to add an associate member to vote on special permits. As I said, only on special permits, if and only if a sitting board member can't vote. And there are at least 3 reasons why that happens sometimes. One of which is conflict of interest. It doesn't happen very often, but in a town as small as Dover, it is the case that sometimes certain members of the planning board will recuse themselves from an issue before the board because of a conflict of interest. The more common reason is scheduling conflicts. These special permit hearings tend to be pretty long and complicated, and The last 4 special permit hearings, for example, lasted a minimum of 3 months, and one of them lasted as long as a year. And so with only 5 members and no associate member currently, the requirement to have 4 affirmative votes presents some challenges in terms of scheduling, because to vote on a special permit, each member sitting in the hearing has to be present at all sessions of the hearing, unless the hearing is recorded, and the member views the recording, and certifies in writing that they viewed the recording, and they never miss another session of the hearing again. So even if one board member misses more than one session, a unanimous vote of the remaining 4 members is required for an approval of a special permit, assuming they're all available to vote on it. And this can get especially problematic if an applicant has a hard time accepting the notion of extending a deadline, or argues that requiring a unanimous vote isn't fair to the applicant. Also, this will help us with turnover issues at election time. These hearings span many months and they routinely overlap town elections. So that creates the same kinds of challenges. Each year, one of the 5 planning board members is up for election. And if a board member doesn't seek re-election or doesn't win re-election, a special permit already underway would require unanimous approval by the remaining 4 board members. And if any of those members are already out of the hearing, then the entire process may have to start over again. So an associate member would have a 2-year term, which would span every other election cycle and would help avoid that problem. So, it's taking so long to describe the situations. You can imagine how we feel when they come up and we have to deal with them, and it does drive the process a little longer. So avoiding all those headaches is the purpose of creating the associate position. As a secondary benefit, while the associate member will only vote on special permits, the associate member would have the ability to engage in all the discussions of any issue for the board. And so we have the benefit of one more mind at the table, and it's also a great training ground for someone who may fill a vacancy in the planning board when vacancies come about. Incidentally, another benefit to the town is that it costs nothing, which is nice. It simply helps the board operate more efficiently. So the board thinks this is a pretty straightforward motion or article, but we're glad to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrow. Any further questions? Could you raise your hand, please?
Hi, Ron Hadar, 60 Main Street. Seems like a good idea, but why not just have another member or add to from 5 to 6?
Yeah, I might be corrected on this if anyone knows differently. I think that under the state law, this is what's consistent with state law. So we have a 5-member planning board. And so under state law, we're allowed to have one associate member as a 5-member board. So I don't believe we're allowed to add one member to the planning board.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, this is a 2/3 vote because it's a zoning bylaw amendment. I'd like to do it as a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Article 12. I have a conflict of interest for Article 12. Therefore, I am going to recuse myself, and I am asking David Havlett, the Assistant Town Moderator, to preside over this article while I remove myself from the podium. Thank you.
All right, let us continue. Article 12, town meeting approval for certain projects on town property. This is a citizen's petition, so Ms. Palmer, while you're making your way, please remember to state who you are and your address.
Barbara Palmer, 145 Dedham Street. Am I making myself heard? Good. I move to amend Chapter 5 Finances of the General Bylaws by adding the following new section, 5-12.1, and further, that non-substantive changes to the numbering of this bylaw be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format for the Code of Dover. 5-12.1, town meeting approval of certain projects on town land in the custody of the Park and Recreation Commission. A, this provision shall govern the expenditure of funds by the Board of Selectmen and/or the Parks and Recreation Commission for any project resulting in installation or construction upon, or the improvement of, any town-owned property in the custody of the Park and Recreation Commission when the total project development cost is $150,000 or more, but less than 50% of such total project development cost has been or will be subject to appropriation by the town. B, prior to the commencement or construction of such a project, all plans and specifications for such a project, along with the proposed budget for the installation, construction, and/or improvements, shall be provided to the Board of Selectmen for review. The Board of Selectmen shall make such information available to the public in an appropriate and timely manner. For the purposes of this section, commencement of construction shall occur when the clearing and grubbing, removal of stumps and topsoil, has been initiated. Section C, prior to the commencement of construction of such project, the approval of town meeting shall be required by a vote of the majority. And D, the approval of town meeting shall be construed as a requirement in addition to those otherwise imposed in General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, and General Law, Chapter 45, Section 5.
Is there a second? Is Wild Sweeney, is that? Great, thank you. Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to amend Dover's bylaws to restrict the use of certain gifts to the town as described in the motion. Ms. Palmer.
All right, thank you. As Article 12 comes to the end of its journey, I remain committed to the simple and elegant notion that the people of Dover should be guaranteed a voice and a vote through the agency of town meeting on projects that deal with the development of public land through private funding. Projects about public land and public funding require your participation. The notion that the people are excluded when the land is public and the funding private seems to me, at least, patently absurd. Land is a special case. What happens to the land has the capacity to change the character of our town. Accordingly, people must be able to decline a project they do not want. Change, extreme and irrevocable, is being proposed for Dover and for our rural character. Change of a magnitude that would render you breathless. I will try to accomplish 4 things tonight and do them quickly. To tell you what Article 12 means in simple English, in case the beautiful lawyerly language didn't penetrate. To give you a bit of its history. To ask you to support it, even as others may urge you to the contrary. Change comes hard to all of us, and Article 12 upsets business as usual. And finally, to demonstrate that Article 12 matters to all of us, and therefore is worthy of your support. The Article 12 we are voting on tonight is not the Article 12 you read about in the Blue Book. It is not changed in terms of its intent, but it has been recrafted to render it clearer and more narrow, to set a higher financial threshold to trigger its application, and finally, to fashion it as a bylaw so that it is known to be regulatory. The measure we will vote on tonight is the version that I read some minutes ago and which have been distributed to all of you. You may ask, why did we amend this? Things would have been faster if we hadn't. Frankly, it was to be responsive to concerns raised by town officials. We learned from their feedback, we improved the measure, making it more worthy of your consideration. So, what does Article 12 mean in simple English? It requires a town meeting vote for land development projects on town-owned parkland if the total project cost is at least $150,000 and if more than 50% of it is to be privately funded. It further adds that proponents must have project plans and specs and budgets and so forth, the sorts of things that you would expect of a project, to be available to the Board of Selectmen, that such documents would also be available to the public, and that all of this precedes the felling of a single tree. And finally, if passed, that Article 12 become a bylaw, a regulatory measure, not an advisory one. We are not deciding tonight whether or not there shall be development in Carroll Park. We are answering the question, do the people want the final say when large projects involving public land and private funding are being decided. It's that simple. It's not about money. It's not about how long we've lived here. It's not about how much we like sports. However you feel about CPARK, think long and hard about whether it's important to you to have a say in major land projects funded through private means. Tonight I'm asking you to approve Article 12, knowing that others are eager to tell you about its alleged risks. One argument you will almost certainly hear is that Article 12 is unnecessary. Let's start with that one. I expect the selectmen will tell you that about a state law referred to familiarly as 53A, everybody's favorite statute at the moment. It establishes the selectmen's authority to control the expending of private gifts and will, I think, become a useful management tool moving forward. The selectmen have promised to write a policies and procedures document that would call for the referral of major land use projects to town meeting. But to my knowledge, this document does not yet exist, and it is not due for a month or more. Whether it will become a worthy stand-in for Article 12 remains to be seen. We don't know whether referral to town meeting would be conditional or obligatory, whether it would apply to future office holders or only the current ones. We don't know how prone such documents are to amendment or repeal, nor do we know if selectmen will invite public comment on the proposed document. I would warn against depending on future events to solve current problems. In contrast, Article 12, if passed tonight, becomes a straightforward obligation. Tonight, by a positive vote, you settle the matter, creating a regulatory vehicle, giving the citizens of the town the undisputed final say. You may hear also that Article 12 might expand the threat of litigation or even fail to pass muster with the Attorney General's office. Raising anxiety about such things is really easy to do, but practically assessing their real-world probability is a very different proposition. We actually have evidence in hand to reduce the latter concern. Weeks ago, Article 12 was submitted to the AG's office for a preliminary assessment. They had a week or more to size it up. I would think plenty of time to reject out of hand an egregious example. But instead, this process led to no immediate objections by the AG. That you not become over-comforted by this fact, understand that this is not an arena typically offering ironclad guarantees. The law is incremental and voluminous. There is enough gray out there to keep an army of lawyers busy till the end of time. And gray is not Town Hall's favorite color. I will say this about Article 12. It has the virtue of dealing with an important idea. It is neither petty nor trivial, nor is it self-serving. Some ideas are worth fighting for. I, for one, would be willing to risk my tax dollars to challenge a misguided state law in service to the idea that the collective will of the people should prevail in determining land use decisions. So now you're left with the question, does this article matter? Does it deserve to become a permanent part of the rules that our town lives by? My answer is a resounding yes. Article 12 matters because Carroll Park and places like it are public land, and they belong to us, all of us. Because private development of public land intrudes upon our collective responsibility to the land and to our right to determine its use. And finally, because without Article 12, private individuals of means can commandeer the land for their own purposes, potentially for commercial gain. And finally, it matters because we love places like Carroll Park. They are entwined with events from our memory books, friends and lovers, husbands and wives, families walking in the woods, over the decades and across the generations. You have your voice. Tonight, ensure your vote so that we may look to a future that promises a public park forever. I want to thank all the good people who have worked hard to help Article 12 on its journey, and I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This thing is all about town meeting, And tonight, with this great turnout, we epitomize direct democracy at its best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's now traditional that we turn to the warrant committee to get them the report from the warrant committee on this article. Mr. Cox.
Dave, Jim Dawley first. Jim Dawley first.
Would you like to go? Okay, that's fine. Jim, do you mind going first?
No, not at all.
Go there.
Thank you, Mr. Haviland. The Board of Selectmen have serious reservations about Article 12, including whether or not it is legally binding. It is apparent that the citizens' petition was created as a means to stop the proposed construction of additional athletic fields at Carroll Park, a project of the Dover Park and Recreation Commission. The Board strongly feels it's within every townsperson's right to have an opinion and to voice that opinion, whether it's at open hearings, attending public meetings, writing letters to the editor, voting at town elections, or with a lawn sign. What we are not comfortable with is the sweeping, perhaps unlawful, permanent changes that could occur if this bylaw passes. Our town meeting acts as our local legislative body, enacting laws and making appropriations, while elected and appointed boards and commissions often take action pursuant to their own powers and duties as spelled out in statutes. As a matter of case law, our legislative body, this town meeting, cannot compel boards and commissioners to act as it wants when they are acting within their exclusive statutory powers. This article's goal is to impose changes in the scopes of authority of the Board of Selectmen and the Park and Recreation Commission by virtue of this town meeting. We feel this is unlawful. This article seeks to locally govern the actions of the Park and Recreation Commission on town-owned property that is within their control. This is in direct conflict with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 45, Section 5, which confers exclusive power to improve parks upon park commissioners. In town council's opinion, this conflict could lead to the Commonwealth's Attorney General enforcing the Massachusetts General Laws in striking down the local petition which causes the conflict. Please remember, as Barbara pointed out, that any bylaw change must be reviewed by the Attorney General, and that is after the positive vote at town meeting. This article specifically asks that projects that meet certain criteria, including the use of donated monies, would require a town meeting vote to move forward. Please be mindful of the fact that the Board of Selectmen, pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, has to approve any and all expenditures of donated monies for any non-school related projects in the town of Dover. Further, this board has publicly stated that before we formally vote on the Carroll Park athletic fields, we would seek a vote from the town meeting and honor those results. There is speculation as to what future boards of selectmen would do. We cannot speak to their decisions, but in the past 176 years, the elected officials have been diligent and honorable in ensuring compliance with both the Commonwealth and Dover's local statutes, in responding to the voice of the people when necessary. We have no reason to believe this will not continue. You should also know that the Park and Recreation Commissioners have formally voted to abide by the results of Question 1, the non-binding ballot question on the May 20, 2013 town election, asking our townspeople the following. Shall the Dover Park and Recreation Commission be advised to proceed with current plans to construct additional athletic fields at Carroll Park, provided such construction is funded only with donated monies and requires no funding from taxes or from the Park and Recreation Revolving Fund? For the many reasons I have stated, including the opinion of Town Council that this is probably unlawful, The Board of Selectmen do not recommend a yes vote on Article 12. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dawley. Now, let's go back to Mr. Cox. You ready?
Thank you. This evening, I represent the Warrant Committee in discussing its recommendation on Article 12 as amended this evening. I start with a reminder that Article 12, in its original form and its amended form, does not seek to approve or deny any specific town project. The article speaks to additional requirements in the overall process of reviewing proposed town projects, looking to add, among other things, town meeting approval. When reviewing the original article, the Warrant Committee expressed concerns regarding the broad reach of the language and positive-negative impact on other town boards and departments. These concerns are reflected in the Blue Book. In amending the article, the petitioners have reasonably addressed several of our concerns. The article, as presented tonight, seeks to amend the town bylaws and is more focused on town-owned property in the custody of the Park and Recreation Commission and expenditures by the Board of Selectmen and/or the Park and Recreation Commission. The Warrant Committee remains concerned, however, that the imposition of town meeting jurisdiction into the approval process is in conflict with Massachusetts state statutes. This conflict could lead to legal challenges of the process and its results. The risks to the town, should such a challenge occur, could be unbudgeted legal fees. The proposed bylaw change, if approved tonight, would next be submitted to the Attorney General's office. Town Council has advised us that it is likely that language would not be approved, making the bylaw change a moot issue. Even if the Attorney General approves the proposal, the risk of court interpretation in the event of a challenge is not mitigated. For this reason, the Warrant Committee does not recommend the approval of Article 12 as amended. We would ask that you reflect on the comments made by the Selectmen this evening. Their commitment to a vote on this issue would provide the same results without the ambiguity of the bylaw change proposed in the amended Article 12. In conclusion, the Warrant Committee recommends a vote of no on Article 12.
Thank you. So, both the selectmen in the majority report of the Warrant Committee have raised some questions on the legality of this motion. And I think it's appropriate that we hear from our town council to find out what those concerns are. Believe it or not, it is not the purview nor the duty of a moderator to determine the legality, the substance of any article. So we turn to experts like Mr. Leahy, and perhaps he can shed some light on this.
Bill Leahy, and I will be brief, and I am available for questions. There's a general principle that the Supreme Judicial Court and the Appeals Court have restated in a variety of contexts, that town meeting can't compel or direct municipal boards that are acting within their exclusive statutory authority. And then, so what I'm left to do in this instance is to look at the general laws and see if the Parks Department is given exclusive statutory authority that would, the proposed bylaw would interfere with or attempt to override. And in those instances, the courts have struck down municipal legislation that tries to interfere with, again, areas that the general court, the state legislature has exclusively given to town bodies. For instance, the school department is a classic example where town meeting has very limited authority to do anything other than, for instance, approve up or down the school committee budget. They can't line item control what the school committee does. As a number of people have referenced, there's two statutory provisions that give me pause and lead me to conclude that the proposed bylaw would interfere with the exclusive powers of the Parks Department. You've heard reference to both of those. One is the gifts statute, Chapter 44, Section 53A, which authorizes municipal departments to accept gifts and expend that gift money subject to only one qualification. Well, two. The subject to that they're spending it for purposes in which the gift was given to them. And number two, the selectmen have to approve it. It's very broad. It's unconditional except for those two provisions. It's quite specific. And again, this is, as someone alluded to the petitioner, this is an interpretation, but it's my interpretation that that broad authority would be interfered with by the proposal, the motion under Article 12. And in addition, we have another statutory provision that also conveys broad authority specifically to the Parks Department to expend, broad powers to improve public parks. So it's my conclusion that those two broad grants of authority would be interfered with and declared illegal if presented to the Attorney General's office, which, as you heard, is required to do. The Attorney General's office has 90 days to approve or disapprove of all bylaws and general bylaws and zoning bylaws. And then if the Attorney General does approve it, it still doesn't mean that it couldn't go to the courts, which often happens and can be litigated in courts, notwithstanding the Attorney General's initial approval. So that's all I was going to say for now. Again, I'm of course available for questions.
Thank you. So the short of all this is all subject matter that you all are going to have to weigh in your debate on this motion before the town meeting. Yes, we get to that right now. So now we would like to get the minority report of the warrant committee and turn to Mrs. Gernert.
Thank you. My name is Brooks Gernert, and I cast the only vote in favor of amended Article 12. My reason is simple. Article 12 is all about democracy, and town meeting represents the purest form of democracy. Article 12 is about wanting to preserve the right to make major decisions that will impact this town at town meeting, where the issues can be voiced and voted on by all voters of the town. We should not relinquish our rights and give up the privilege to meet, discuss, and decide at town meeting what will happen to Carroll Park or any other parkland. Town council has stated that litigation by or against boards and commissions may ensue due to the article's imposition of a town meeting vote in addition to approval by selectmen. There is no case law on this specific question. It is a gray area subject to interpretation, but the courts should allow our town to rule on a question that has such a major impact on the character and quality of life in our town. There's no smoking gun here, no direct precedent to not allow our town to determine its own fate. The town should not be disenfranchised if a significant donation were to be made that would finance a project that the town doesn't want. Park and Rec should not be responsible for making this decision, nor should the Board of Selectmen. The decision should rest solely with town meeting. Tonight, we're not here to discuss the merits of Sea Park. We're not here to discuss the need, finances, environmental impacts, traffic impacts, pros and cons of each of the items included in that plan. We're not here to even discuss alternatives, but we should be. We should be able, as a group, to discuss and debate all of the concerns, all of the consequences involved, and together come up with the best solution. And there is a solution. It's staring us right in the face, but we can't talk about that tonight. That's why this is so backwards. We're potentially going to allow a major project to happen without bringing it to town meeting. Article 12 is not against the Board of Selectmen, who work hard and long for all of us. They have recently stated that they would bring such a large project to town meeting. Good. Article 12 ensures that that will happen now and in the future. Remember, this is about the process, and every single one of us, Sea Park, pro-Sea Park or against Sea Park, should be in favor of preserving our right to openly discuss a project as large as the one currently being proposed and to control our own destiny. It's that simple. That's why I voted for Article 12. I urge you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Just because things can't be easy, we already have an amendment to this article. Is Mr. Fryer in the audience? There you are. Would you like to come forward and make your amendment, please? And I would like to say thank you very much for bringing it up in advance.
I'm Alan Fryer, Tower Drive. What I've done is I'm going to make a motion to require disclosure of major donors in a situation such as the Carroll Park situation. Having served for 6 years on the warrant committee a few years back. I'm sorry, is the mic on? Okay. Having served on the warrant committee a few years back for 6 years, it's not only important to watch where the money goes, but I think in a situation like this, it's important to know where the money comes from. And the idea is not to impose a burden on the small donors, but if there are major donors, then I think everyone should have a right to know who they are. So, was there a second to the original motion? No, second.
Yes. Yes, there was.
But I'd like to make a motion to amend the main motion. I move to amend the main motion to add a requirement that the sponsor of any project within the scope of the main motion be required to file with the town clerk on at least a quarterly basis a report listing the name and address of every person, entity, or household that makes any one or more donations with a total value of more than $5,000 in support of the project, and listing the amount of each donation during the reporting period, the total amount of donations made as of the end of the reporting period, and the amount of any additional amounts that have been pledged as future donations by that person or household. I think it's obviously pretty obvious what I'm proposing here, so I won't discuss it any further. I did want to make a comment about the Attorney General issue. There is this process by the Attorney General to see whether what town meeting is doing here passes muster, and if there's some doubt about it, let the Attorney General rule on it. If they rule against it, then that settles the issue. But it seems to me that in this type of situation we have with Carroll Park, there ought to be some mechanism that ensures that town meeting have a say in this. We would have a say in it if it was publicly appropriated money, and we should have a say in it if it's majority privately appropriated. Thank you.
May I please have the name of the person who seconded the amendment? I'm sorry, I can't see.
What is your name, sir?
Sorry. You may. The motion or the amendment?
Motion to amend.
Yeah.
I would simply add to the point, some may ask why I took up the town meeting's valuable time relative to Article 1 and pages 179 to 185 of the town report, wherein not a single financial amount was referenced, as is required by existing current statute. This simply points out we've not had transparency in the past. We do not have transparency currently.
Is there any other discussion to this amendment? Okay, well then it's going to be hearing no further discussion, this is going to be a majority vote. All those... Yes, please, point of order.
Question of point of order. Do we vote on making the amendment?
We are voting right now on the amendment itself.
Did we vote to amend the original motion?
That's what we're voting on right now.
We're
Which is
go-
different than the motion itself.
Correct.
Okay, so
First,
just, if you could just clarify it for us?
okay, so, thank you for clarity. We are now voting, and I'll repeat the motion. I move to amend the main motion to add a requirement that the sponsor of any project within the scope of the main motion be required to file with the town clerk on at least a quarterly basis a report listing the name and address of every person, entity, or household that makes any one or more donations with a total value of more than $5,000 in support of the project, and listing the amount of each donation during the reporting period, the total amount of donations made as of the end of the reporting period, in the amount of any additional amounts that have been pledged as future donations by that person, entity, or household. So what we're going to be voting on right now is simply, do you wish to include this amendment to the main motion? All those in favor, please say aye. So, we come back to the main motion as now amended. And what I would like to do is, before we open this up to the floor, is give a little bit of ground rules on the subject matter at hand. So we're speaking to the merits of a proposed bylaw change. And what I'm going to ask is that everyone please refrain from becoming too mired in the specifics of any one project or proposal, real or imagined. Unfortunately, there has been recent press reports inaccurately portraying Article 12 as a referendum on the Sea Park project. This is incorrect. This is not a discussion about the need for playing fields, the merits of or problems with artificial turf, or other similar issues likely to come up if the Sea Park project moves forward. Rather, this motion, and now this amended motion, is asking whether we should, in addition to the Selectmen's review, require that town meeting approve any large donated project that was proposed to be built on any of Dover's Park and Rec lands. In the interest of time, I'm asking that you focus your comments on the merits of or problems with this motion. So with this guidance, is there any other further discussion? I believe Mr. Oasis in the back would like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Rich Oasis, 12 Wildwood Road. On behalf of the Park and Rec Commission, I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this issue tonight. The Park and Recreation Commission unanimously opposes the citizens' petition for several reasons. As we've just heard from a couple different people, Chapter 45, Section 5 gives Park and Recreation the authority to manage the public parks. So now maybe you're wondering who are the Park and Rec Commissioners, because there are others in addition to me who really have a terrific background in terms of making the right decisions for Dover. One of the commissioners on our board started the Dover Children's Lacrosse program, while another started the Dover Children's Youth Baseball and Softball Commission. A third commissioner refereed soccer games and has coached soccer long after his children grew out of the program. From a commitment and town involvement standpoint, we have commissioners who have or are currently serving with the Carroll Management Advisory Commission, the Carroll Community Center Building Commission. One of our commissioners was the past president of the PTO, the School Advisory Council, Capital Budget, Warren, Open Space, Recycling, and the Council on Aging. Of course, all these esteemed groups and committees are in addition to our passion for parks and recreation. As elected officials with the legal responsibility and authority to manage parks and recreation, as well as a thorough background and commitment to serving the town of Dover, we feel the citizens' petition should be opposed. There are two ways for a project to go forward in Dover. The monies are to be raised publicly and require a town meeting vote, as we've all heard. If the monies are to be raised privately, the disbursement of these privately raised funds comes under the jurisdiction of the Selectmen.
So if for whatever reason you don't think the Park and Rec Commissioners have the legal authority nor the proper commitment to the town to make the right decisions, you have either town meeting or the selectmen who control the money. Now, I've heard once or twice that we're not perfect as a commission, but to take away the final authority of the selectmen is wrong. Both of our distinguished selectmen liaise with multiple town committees and groups, and their commitment is exceptional. They spend more time working on town issues than there are hours in a week. The citizens' petition is an affront to their leadership. Finally, we've heard from town council that even if this citizens' petition passes tonight, it will likely not be approved by the state attorney general. And even if it did, it would be overturned in court. So you maybe are wondering, what's the downside? Even if the petition passes tonight, it gets overturned in court. Well, it's dollars and cents. As we've heard before, Ms. Palmer called it a gray area, and the town council called it a gray area. For Dover, I think it's green. It talks more about money and the cost of the town to fight the battle in court. While this was a petition from some citizens of Dover, let's all remember that it's not for the citizens of Dover. I would urge you to vote no on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Shelley? We'll get to you.
Shelley Polson, 53 Main Street. I'm just thinking off the cuff here. I love passion. I'm passionate myself too, so I say I'm glad everybody's here. We also have a ballot question coming up on the issue of the Carroll Park athletic fields. I say everybody come out and vote. I don't even ask what your vote is, but by all means come out and vote. With respect to this article, I'm more cautious because I tried on the regional school committee to get an answer out of the state on an intermunicipal agreement, and a week was nothing in terms of the time it takes to get anything out of the state. So I would like to make a motion to table this article, because you would then find out what the town says on the ballot question, and we'd be back here next year to move the motion. I think we'd have more information. We'd be able to get answers from the Attorney General's office. Thank you.
First of all, is there a second to the motion to table? There is a second. May I have both your names for the record, please? I'm sorry, I can't see who said that. Shelley Polson made the motion to table. There was a second by Richard Green. Okay. Motion to table requires a 2/3 vote. Is it debatable? It is not debatable. So right now we are voting to take this issue off the table, quite literally. So let's see, a vote for it is to remove it from consideration tonight, and a vote against is to leave it in consideration tonight. Did I get that right?
Restate that.
Say it again? I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm having trouble hearing. Okay, so we have a motion to table this. In other words, remove it from consideration this evening. So a vote for this motion to table is removing it. In other words, if, it takes away our ability to vote on this issue tonight. Correct, on Article 12, the motion on the floor as amended. This is fun. Okay, so if you wish to vote for Article 12, then vote against what we're about to vote against. Is that clear as mud? All those in favor of the motion to table, please say aye. Aye. All those against? No. The nays have it. Okay, so we are back to, it was a 2/3 vote, but that was clear that it was 2/3 against that motion. Okay, so now we are back to the amended motion on the floor. There's a gentleman who's been patient in the corner. If a page could bring you a microphone, that'd be terrific.
Edmund Stein, 2 High Rock Road, Dover, Mass. I think it's a very interesting question that's been raised. I'm kind of regret some of the discussion on two counts. First of all, the practicing commission member who spoke, I felt, was saying effectively, we know better than the town of Dover, the people of the town of Dover. I thought this was not about the Carroll question. I thought it was simply a question of how we operate in the town. And I think we should stick to that point. I personally feel that the motion that has been suggested, I think is a good one, and I would have no objection to it. I think it does add a bit of confusion, etc., to possible projects, but we had trouble with the project of a year ago, and I think this one is trying to get around this year we're trying to get around some of the things that happened a year ago, and I think that's unfortunate. I also find the amendment to be so small, of $5,000 only. It may add unfortunate confusion to whether this is a good amendment to the town bylaws or not. Frankly, I'm discouraged by that, but I think that could be fixed at a later date. I just simply say to you that it ought to be a more than $5,000 donation to make it a significant or material decision. And the detail that was added of annual reports, etc., I think really confuses the whole issue about making this decision about the bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Let me go over to this side. My apologies. Yes, there's a page with a microphone right there.
Gerald Clark, Valley Road. I'm sorry, Mr. Stein, if I confused you by raising the issue on the town report. It's simply pointing out that the Mass General Laws requires that in the town report we have full disclosure of all sources of revenue and how those monies are spent by certain committees, specifically the Park and Rec. And in fact, there was no disclosure. That's the only point relative to the town meeting. On the motion before the floor, first, I have to say to you that I too don't like.
Perhaps you can come down to a microphone that will keep working.
I was saying that I too don't like the way the discussion may seemingly be going, so I want to say right up front that I think we owe a great applause and acclaim to Park and Rec. They've put in a phenomenal amount of effort. They are clearly interested in servicing the needs of those individuals to whom they provide services, and I don't think we should forget that, number one. But having said that, as to what's before the body, as to the motion, I think we have to look at process. First of all is the question, will the Attorney General approve or disapprove this proposed bylaw, which at some point the moderator will announce that requires a 2/3 vote?
Actually, that is not true.
For
It
a
is a
bylaw
bylaw change, but it is not a zoning
Okay,
bylaw
it's
change.
not a
It's a majority
zoning.
vote.
So let's suppose the Attorney General approves it. Well, that'll be the next step. If the Attorney General doesn't approve it, then obviously we will look to the good services of the selectmen relative to 53A, Mass General Laws 53A, to indeed choose how to spend those monies. And I think that's excellent. And I can't conceive of anyone, including the selectmen, choosing to expend monies to appeal the Attorney General's ruling. Now, let's suppose, therefore, that the Attorney General does approve this bylaw change. Then the question arises, what happens next? Now, from someone who's been actively involved in major fundraising, far in excess of the numbers that have been discussed in all of this, I will tell you that it's difficult to get big donors if they don't think something's going to happen. So the Park and Rec rightfully might raise the question, if this motion passes, will it preclude their ability to raise private funds? The answer to that, of course, is that this is simply a matter of process. So therefore, they may not be able to immediately get those funds, but if they were to provide the necessary plans and disclosure such that it was clear that town meeting would approve this, then going forward, one could raise those funds. Now, furthermore, the question arose here, and the threat of litigation arose, and the question is, who has standing? Who would have standing to raise litigation because this bylaw were to exist? I doubt that the selectmen would sue themselves. No donor, private donor, would have standing. So that leaves the Park and Rec. Now, Park and Rec could choose to sue the town, and I guess the argument would be as to a constraint on their ability to act. And town council has raised the point that there have been other cases in other matters where towns have imposed on certain boards restrictions on what they could do. This bylaw does not do that. This bylaw doesn't tell anyone what they can or cannot do. What it does say is that before you go ahead and do what you want to do, if you have private funding, get town meeting approval. So, having said all of that, again, I say to you, we shouldn't be thinking of this as a disapproval of either the selectmen, who in their position, I absolutely agree with them. I would not otherwise want to have someone looking over my shoulder when I think I have, under Mass General Laws 53A, good standing to control the matter. And I certainly think the Park and Rec, as I've said previously in other meetings, has expended a vast amount of energy and a vast amount of emotion and does serve their constituents well.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? I see. Wait. Okay, so now we are going to vote. It requires a 2/3 vote on whether we wish to move the question and proceed directly to the vote on Article 12. All those in favor of moving the question, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The motion carries. We are going to go to the vote on Article 12 as amended. So, yes, I'm sorry, I did declare by a 2/3 vote. So now we're going to go back to the vote on the Article 12 and the motion before this body. And again, this is just a simple majority vote. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. 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 As a majority, that was a clear yes. Motion 12 passes.
I'd like to thank Dave Havlin for an outstanding job. Thank you very much, Dave. Now we move on to Article 13, air conditioning for the middle school.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approves the $853,000 borrowing authorized by the Dover-Sherburne Regional School District on March 5, 2013, for the purpose of paying costs of adding air conditioning to the middle school, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Gernert has made a motion that has been seconded by Mrs. Gilbody with respect to approving a borrowing of $853,000, which has been authorized by the Dover-Sherburne Regional District School. I would like to have discussion on this motion now. Ms. Paulson?
Hi, I'm now speaking as the current chair of the Regional School Committee. So the middle school is a gorgeous new building that we built in 2003, and it's phenomenal. Very soon thereafter, anecdotal information came in that it was very hot, and I had the reaction, bear with it, to my son, not to townspeople. We have since moved forward to 2013. We've had anecdotal information, surveys from teachers. We've had data. We can take data hourly in the classrooms. So I just want to walk you through very, very quickly why I'm coming tonight looking for approval from the townspeople to air condition the middle school. Next one. Next one, I did that one. There's 42 classrooms plus additional ones. There are additional spaces. Some spaces in blue are currently air conditioned. Some of the biology labs, the administrative offices and whatnot, but the majority of the classrooms are on the second floor and are not air conditioned. Next. What is the right temperature? We're not looking to get to the right temperature, but if you read this, I won't spell it out for you. The best atmosphere to learn in would be 68 to 70, 72 degrees. The temperatures that we're looking at in the classrooms are exceeding 78 degrees into the 80s and into the 90 degrees. So it's extremely difficult for learning and, as importantly, for teaching to occur. So we're trying to bring it down to something more appropriate, but ideally it would be around 68 to 70, 72. So we're going to show you some slides that I'm going to go through very quickly because it's a late hour. But basically, I said we could take information on an hourly basis. A subcommittee was put together to find out really, what's this anecdotal information and how many days is it in the classroom and how many classrooms. Maybe we could just fix some classrooms. So if you go to the next one, Bill. On the far left, that's one day in the life of the middle school. It starts at 7 a.m. and ends at 4 p.m. And that's really when the teachers need to be there, then the students join, and then the teachers are there afterwards until 4 o'clock. And running down it, there are rooms. So if you go to the next one, Bill, I'll give you an indicator. This was 2010. This was a week in May. So what we did was we color-coded things that were above 78 degrees. So yellow was 78 to 80, then we moved 80 to 85, went into orange. 85 to 90 was in red, and then above 90 degrees was in black. So you can see there were some rooms. This is not all the rooms in the school, but an idea that we were starting to have some classrooms had heat above 78. Next. So this was an example of where most of the building was extremely hot in classrooms for the majority of the school day. Next. This is a day in June. You can keep going, Bill. Some of the days, but it was lightening up, and then again. And here again, this is the last day of school. You can see it's getting really hot. And I'm going to go through this quickly, so go ahead. And the start of school, in September, we had excessively hot days, so that black is all over 90 degrees. Another hot day, a week in September, it got easier. Go ahead, keep going through these. We'll pass through these. Keep going. All right, so stop here. So in looking at all that data, we were able to find out that close to 20% of the school year, the classrooms are above 78% and much higher than that. We're spending millions of dollars on salary, and the teachers, I think it's the next slide, the teachers are reporting they felt dizzy. They couldn't concentrate, they had excessive thirst, they had headaches, inability to concentrate. The students just shut down. My son would come home, he's now in college, but he would come home and say, my brain was baking. So go ahead. Thank you. So what we did over so many years was, what could we do? Were there certain things that we could do? Could we tint windows? Could we change the windows? Could we change the roof so it's white? Could we put ceiling fans in? Could we put some air conditioning units just in some of the hot rooms? Could we put in portable ones? This has been vetted and vetted and vetted by the school committee, the warrant committee, the selectmen, and their counterparts in the town of Sherborne. I'd like to thank the town of Sherborne. They supported this on Saturday at their town meeting to go ahead with it. So what we are suggesting for approval tonight is air conditioning the classrooms that are not currently air conditioned in the middle school. The total price tag is $853,000, and that's shared between the two towns. So Dover's piece is $467,000 plus interest over a 5-year period. Talking about passion, I would greatly appreciate if we could go back to the students and the teachers and let them know that in summer 2013, we're putting air conditioning in their classrooms. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Poulsen. Can I have any further discussion? Mr. Fleming. Mr. Fleming? Sir, could you stand at the podium? Thank you.
Jim Fleming, Fox Run Road. What we're getting proposal is to pay half of the $853,000 for air conditioning. We've not been offered any alternative here. What you proposed is air condition these buildings. No other alternatives on ventilation or how to manage this problem. Clearly, there is a ventilation problem. The building was built 2003, and as it was just attested, superb building, state of the art. We haven't heard about any feedback on the design of the construction process. We hear that the school committee and the warrant committee looked at this problem, but if I've got a serious problem, I think I'd go to an expert to talk about the resolution of the problem. I think the key issue here is we have a building that is not officially used in the summer. We're talking about central air conditioning for a building technically that is not open in the summer. And as we see, is this summer going to be like this spring? I don't think we've got an air conditioning problem. The key here is when the building was designed, they made a wise decision. There's a central office group that works 12 months. That's air conditioned. And I heard at a warrant meeting, comment made that there was worried about the grounds people. I think the grounds people know where the central office is, and I think they know what to do on a very warm day. This year, and I think we need to put this on the table, our average cost per student in Dover is $18,000 per student. Now, I say congratulations to you who have 2 or 3 children in school. But I say we need to use moderation and treat all matters even-handedly, knowing that all the citizens in town share the cost. We're in a situation in town, and I think you're aware of it. You paid your tax bill May 1st. Your taxes went up significantly, but the value of your home went down. Dover is in a unique situation. The value of homes have dropped. They're coming back very slowly. And property sells in Dover now very slowly. Some people consider their home a significant investment. You need to, so we're going to talk about more costs. There's another issue in the air conditioning is I was asked the question, what will be the additional cost to keep the air conditioning running over and above the current electric bill? It was said $13,000. Now you're buying into some fixed cost here. You're buying into an increased electricity costs, which will continue to grow. I think that we need to be, for a lot of reasons, prudent about where we spend our money these days. There's very little discretion in this budget. As the numbers were just reported, the schools pick up 66% of your tax monies, and insurance and pensions pick up 20%. You have very little free money to spend on other matters. I don't think this is a high priority. I think there's a lot of kids in the greater Boston area who would love to come in to Dover on a warm day and participate in this education process. So I strongly recommend that the school committee go back, get some expert advice, examine the problem, and bring back to us alternative proposals that do not increase fixed costs and continuing grow costs, and help us manage. We have a good school system, but now we've got to manage those expenses. Thank you.
Further discussion, Ms. Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. I appreciate that because in my hurry to go through, I didn't walk you through 10 years of history. There was an air purge system put in 2007, and that was to help alleviate some of the problems. The building was initially built to have air conditioning, and that was pulled out at some point as a cost measure, but the building was not redesigned, so it probably would have been built differently if ventilation was going to be an issue. I was on the Chickering Building Committee, and we pulled out air conditioning for the same reason, with great assurances that everything would be okay. And some of the rooms there are hot too. I don't have the data, but this is excessively hot. So the air purge system was put in. It does work on outside humidity levels as well, because they don't want to bring the humidity in, so that system shuts down. The building seems to retain heat. It may be that large piece in the middle we call the atrium. Fire code regulations require that classroom doors be closed, windows are closed at night. So last year we did have custodians coming in at 5 a.m. in the morning and cranking open those very little windows to try and move air before students came in. It helped for the beginning part of the day. This, we did have experts come in. We had an outside consultant come in, look at our entire building, at all the designs, what we've done to alleviate the problem, and the suggestion was that you could put a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, into putting in new windows. You're not really going to bring down the 10 degrees that you're looking to make this doable for teachers and students. This was brought up by the teachers at the last contract negotiations as a significant issue for them. We're really trying to let learning happen. So our operating budget was over $9 million. The bulk of that is salaries. If you can't provide the learning environment where the teachers can put two and two together in their own heads, I don't know how they're going to be able to teach it to the students. Thank you.
Further discussion? Lady on the left-hand side here in the red, could I have a page, bring a microphone right over here. Raise your hand, please. Oh, I'm sorry, we need a microphone. Could you bring a microphone to her, sir? Thank you. We need it because of television as well as so people can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm a little confused. Maybe it's because I don't have children in the school system. But you're talking about the middle school, is that correct? The one.
Sorry, can I have your name and address?
Oh, my name's Helen Haas. I live at 65 Walpole Street.
Okay, thank you.
You're talking about the middle school that has the copper siding, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. It sounds like to me that the design was improper from beginning, knowing that that material would conduct heat.
Well, I think as Mrs. Poulsen mentioned, the original design was going to include air conditioning, and then the air conditioning was budgeted out because of cost concerns.
Would not the plan then have been changed in any way to modify for that error?
Mrs. Poulsen, could you ask your question? Thank you. Mrs. Poulsen, could you respond to that?
Sorry, can you please repeat the question?
I would think that the design at that point, knowing that the air conditioning was not going to be utilized, that it would have been prudent on our part to go back and have the design evaluated at the time of building, as opposed to now when we are asked to put additional money into it.
I agree. I was also on the Chickering Building Committee, and we didn't redesign the building either, so I think there are lessons learned.
Well, I hate to say it, but from just being a citizen, it sounds like we were irresponsible in taking the position that we did in the design.
Thank you very much. If you have no further questions, and further discussion, please. Ms. Sims. Could I have a microphone, please? Please raise your hand. I'm sorry. Did you want to comment, Superintendent? Okay, sure.
I just, first of all, want to thank you for the support that you gave us on the operating budget. We have been extremely sensitive to the issues that have been raised regarding the real estate, the economy. We would not have brought this forward unless we had vetted this completely. We have had probably 3 different experts that have come into the building that have studied it, and to the point, the design was a design, and I don't know why the decision was made to eliminate the air conditioning when the architectural design was for air conditioning. Unfortunately, when they made that decision, there was no ventilation provided for the building, so it is compounded. We have looked at the possibility of altering the design. It is far more costly, and as Shelley pointed out, it doesn't provide what you've done. We've looked at the data. We have accumulated the data. I personally have gone into the rooms. For those of you that have had children at the middle school during an open house in the evening, you have also felt after the sun goes down how hot those rooms can be. I will share with you, we've put ceiling fans into a couple of rooms to try that. I have worked with the students in those rooms with the ceiling fans. If you look at the percentages that were presented to you, 20% of the time that we're investing is counterproductive because the heat temperature is above the range of, and I'm not just saying 78, I'm saying it's way above. The other thing that I would share with you, when we talked about the summer, if the building is not going to be used, we will also have the capacity to turn the air conditioning off. We've looked at that. We've looked at the energy study. The data has been posted on our website. We've done presentations to as many different groups as we could, and I apologize for any of you that we haven't reached. This is not a want to have. This is something that is a need to have if we're going to continue to maximize the learning for your students. And I thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Thank you. Please hold your applause so that we can move this discussion along. Ms. Sims has her hand up here in the front row. If I could have a page come down to the front.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Sims. I live at 6 Sanger Circle in Dover, obviously. I would like to ask all of the people in the audience who have adult children to imagine that your child is a teacher in the middle school, trying to impart knowledge to children in temperatures that are 78, 80, 90 degrees on an ongoing basis. How would you advise that child if she were offered or he were offered a job in another school district where the conditions weren't so unpleasant. And then to those of you in the audience who have children, school-age children, how do you advise your child to learn and do their homework effectively when perhaps during the day they weren't allowed to really understand what was going on because their head hurt too much, or they were dizzy, or God forbid they passed out, which I know kids have done that. 2 of my kids have asthma, and the complications existed for them. From personal perspective, I encourage you to vote in favor of the air conditioning article. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sims. Any further discussion? Gentleman over here.
Hi. Sorry. Doug Smith, 93 Dedham Street. Just a thought. Of course, the children should have a proper learning environment, so I'm all for that. But I wonder if there might be a common sense approach to this. When you go onto Google Earth and you look down at those buildings, the roofs are jet black. A black car in a hot parking lot obviously is a heat sink. Therefore, I would propose very inexpensively, I'm a builder, so I know a couple of things about buildings. You spray paint that white and put some solar panels up there. You'll be able to offset a bunch of costs. The reflective value of the solar panels and the white roof will drop those temperatures substantially, and you will get the benefit of having solar in the building. If that doesn't solve the problem, then yes, revisit the issue with air conditioning. And shame on the HVAC contractors who did not do a proper job in sizing that building from the get-go. I went through the Newton school system, went to Newton North High School, and we just knocked that down. 30 years as a municipal building, and it just got toasted. You know, $168 million later. But anyway, white roof, solar panels, see if that does the problem first, and then, if it doesn't, add in the AC, and the solar panels will take care of offset some of the electrical expenses.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I think Mrs. Poulsen would like to respond to that.
Yes, that was one of the items. Is this not on anymore? Hello? That was one of the items that we considered to put on the, we couldn't just paint it because of warranties, now it's passed. To put on a white rubber roof was over $200,000 to try it. We don't know if it would bring it down enough based on the experts who brought us in. They said no. And also you then don't have, the black is bad in the summer but really good during all the winter months when we have the heat on. So you may gain it for the air conditioning purpose, but you're losing it when you're trying to retain heat in the winter. So we did look at that one. And we looked at solar panels. I mean, I hate to take up so much time, but we got asked so many questions about common sense approaches. This has been years and years, and we're trying to bring it down at least 10 degrees. The experts say you're not going to do that unless you put in air conditioning.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? I'm sorry, there's a woman here with her hand up. Could we have a microphone? I believe she wants to move the question, but I'm going to have to ask you to state your name and address. Can I have a microphone here, please? Right in the middle. Right down here. Right, bring it down here. 6th row from the front here. Come on down. Could you raise your hand? There you go.
My name is Nancy Adams, live at 17 Wilsondale Street. I move the question, please.
Okay, question has been moved. This is not debatable. All in favor of voting on the question, moving the question, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. The ayes carry the majority. Okay, let's move. I'm sorry. The ayes have the majority, so now let's move to the question itself. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's try this again. It's a 2/3 vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. It's a 2/3 vote. Thank you. Now let's move to consideration of the motion, the air conditioning at the middle school, in the amount of $853,000. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 14. I would
Moderator.
remind you that we can have motions to reconsider votes, so it's really not safe to leave until the town meeting is dissolved. Thank you. Article 14, Dover-Sherburne Regional School Committee.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
Mrs. Gurner has made a motion to dismiss Article 14. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Gilbody has second. Any discussion on the motion to dismiss Article 14? All in favor of dismissing Article 14, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 15, borrowing of $122,000 by Dover-Sherburne Regional School Committee.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approves the $122,000 borrowing authorized by the Dover-Sherburne Regional School District on March 5th, 2013, for the purpose of paying costs of the following capital equipment and improvements: replacing failing VCT flooring at the middle school, $47,000; masonry repointing for Lindquist, $22,000; lighting and pathways for the high school parking, $16,000; flooring updates in the high school, $14,000; irrigation valve maintenance allowance, $7,500; replace snow blower equipment, $6,000; exhaust fan maintenance replacement for kitchen, $5,500; replace overhead high school service doors energy efficient, $4,000, totaling $122,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto.
Thank you, Mrs. Gilbody. Second?
Second.
Mrs. Gurnett has second. A motion has been made and seconded to approve $122,000 borrowing authorized by the Dover-Sherburne Regional School District on March 5th, 2013. This is a majority vote. Discussion? Yes, sir. Go right over here.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Merrill, and I live at 14 Meadowbrook Road. And I have two relatively succinct questions. The first of which is, we know not only with this article, but with the previous one, what Dover's portion of the borrowing is. What is the definitional reason why we approve the entire borrowing rather than just Dover's portion? Second, and again, a subset to that, in each case, we're talking about a 5-year bond obligation. Is that a commitment from the Regional School Committee to only borrow for 5 years, or do we know how long the borrowing is going to take and what additional funds will be necessary to repay our portion of whatever is borrowed?
All right, thank you for the questions. Let me turn to Mrs. Poulsen. Would you like to respond to those questions? Or Superintendent Sprague? Okay, Mrs. Poulsen.
Sir, to answer your question about why did we ask to borrow the whole thing, we have a regional agreement. The Regional School Committee has a regional agreement with the towns of Dover and Sherborne, and according to the rules of the agreement, we have to state it in that way. We just have to state it in that way. Because the actual share comes down to student enrollments with a formula that's also in the regional agreement, and we look at those enrollments on a certain date, and that's when the shares are divvied up. So it's largely on student enrollments on a given day, but there's a particular formula. So under the current enrollments, that would be Dover's share, $467,000 plus interest. Yes, the region is looking for a 5-year bond. And so the actual number may vary each year. Interest rates might be better than we anticipated and whatnot. Anything else?
Superintendent Sprague?
Thank you, sir. The other thing that might be of help to you all is to realize that the town had asked us to really look in depth at the maintenance of the building. We realized that we had relatively new building. We've had kind of a honeymoon period where we haven't had to look at major upkeep. What we did do was to take some advice, look for people that specialized in the particular areas that construction and also facility upkeep and long-term maintenance could provide for us. A 20-year plan has been developed, has been shared with the town. We've gone over that with the capital committee. We'll continue to bring that to you as it's posted on our website. We're happy for you all to look at it. We're happy to answer any questions. But our feeling is by making this long-range plan, we're also investing in not having to look at a new building, but taking care of what we do have. So I hope that that helps a little bit too.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Fryer, right there. Thank you.
Alan Fryer, Tower Drive. As I said before, I served on the warrant committee some years back and spent a lot of time dealing with the regional school committee budget. And it's a little different because it's a regional school, and therefore it requires both Dover and Sherburne to approve the budgets. Before I was on the warrant committee, there was a major problem because between 20 and 30 years ago, what they were doing was deferring maintenance on the buildings because times were tight and they weren't fixing things as problems developed. They accumulated them, and then they needed a major borrowing in order to pay for those repairs. And when I came on the warrant committee and started dealing with this, was just ending. The problem is that when you borrow like that, you then build into the budget the interest costs that are incurred as a result of the borrowing, which distorts the budget. And so when they ended that, we had extensive discussions, both the Dover Warrant Committee and the Sherburne Advisory Committee made it clear to the region that they should not be borrowing for these kinds of expenses. They should be built, the budget is big enough that you can build items as modest as these into the annual budget, and they should be funded that way so that you don't end up with long-term borrowing to fix these kinds of things. This is different from the middle school air conditioning, which is obviously a much bigger dollar item. But on things like this, that in aggregate add up to a little more than $100,000, they should be financed through the regular budget. And I would ask either the region or the warrant committee or somebody to comment on why these kinds of amounts are being borrowed now instead of funded the way they were intended to be.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Poulsen, would you like to respond to that question?
Yes, that's a really good question. And some of these items look like, why would they even be a capital item? Each year, the regional school committee has set aside about $35,000 of its operating budget for capital items, so it's contained in the operating budget. The regional campus is a $40 million campus, and as Mrs. Spriggs said, we've finished the honeymoon period after the building of the middle school and the renovation of the high school. So there's a lot of end-of-life issues right now. So the special, what did I say? I tend to say other than what my brain is saying. So when my preschoolers laugh at me too, I say, what did I say? So we had a 20-year capital needs assessment plan done. The numbers are daunting. I have to say, we put the most conservative regional school committee member on task, along with Mrs. White, if she's here, to figure out how do we approach this. So this is the first year. This was the bare bones items to address. We are working with both towns, and to put a magnitude of $122,000 into an operating budget could not be sustained with both parties involved. So we are looking to, this is bare bones stuff this first year, we're looking to get these capital items approved in a separate article as such, and then we all have to pull up our sleeves and figure out how to address the campus as it starts aging. So I respect your point.
Thank you. Mr. Fryer?
If I understand what you're saying that this is the first small installment of some additional major expenditures that are going to require further borrowing. And that's exactly the problem that occurred 25, 30 years ago, that the whole idea was to plan properly and budget properly so that you don't suddenly end up with this. Because if you're going to be borrowing for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, every year for a 5-year borrowing, you're building in significant additional interest costs that distort the budget over a long period of time.
Mr. Dawley?
Yes. To be specific, Mr. Pryor, when the regional school committee came to us over the last couple of years and with these capital requests and what do we do over the next 20 years, we tried to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Sherburne whereby we would put that in Article 4 through the assessment. That would have had to have been voted and approved by both towns. Sherburne refused to do it. So the only way these can be funded through the regional school is through bonding. The town of Dover, its wishes would have been through Article 4, but we cannot do that because of Sherburne's non-interest.
Mrs. Polson?
Yes, so the intermunicipal agreement, after it took many months to get some information out of the state, we now have some clarity for both towns, but it was too late for this town meeting, so the intermunicipal agreement could be raised again, although I keep looking at the selectmen because they probably don't want to, but anyway. So to your point, yes, we don't want to have to keep doing this as capital items. One of the projects that we have to go through is with this 20-year assessment plan, should we be putting in a certain magnitude, a large magnitude each year so that we're not seeing any spikes, or we're not spending interest where we don't have to spend interest. And it's going to take more time than the time since we had the report. But again, these are repairing flooring, replacing an exhaust system. They're just the items that the most conservative person said, let's get this out of the way while we figure out what to do with the bigger numbers.
Superintendent?
In response to that particular question regarding the interest, because I think the selectmen have worked with the regional school committee as well as with the administration on trying to help us with a restructuring format so that we would be looking at our capital expenditures in a different way. And this is really a beginning for us. All that Jim and Shelley have shared with you is true. But in addition to that, I think you should be aware that there is a bit of a paradigm shift within the way in which we've done business. And Carol has tried to get us to look at having the internal accounts for the capital expenditures larger so that this will not necessarily have to be a continued basis, that we will be able to go ahead and do that. We haven't done it as of yet for some of the reasons you heard, but please do know that it is not off the table.
Thank you. Mindful of the time, is there any further discussion? Mr. Crowley. Thank you, Mr. Crowley. This is a 2/3 vote. It is not debatable. All in, sorry, I'm getting tired. It's a majority vote. It is not debatable. All in favor of moving the question? Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so now we move to the main motion, which is the borrowing of $122,000 by the Dover-Sherburne Regional School Committee. All in favor of the main motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Carries by a majority. Thank you very much. Article 16. Motion to dismiss.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
Okay. A motion has been made that Article 16 be dismissed. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Mrs. Gernon has second. Any discussion on dismissing Article 16? All in favor of dismissing, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Article 17, rail trail.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of continuing the study of the feasibility of converting the Bay Colony Railroad line into a recreational path.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Cox has made a motion, and Mr. Forte a second with respect to feasibility study. with respect to a rail trail. Discussion, Mr. Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Greg Hills, 44 Pine Street. It is my privilege to represent the Dover Rail Trail Committee in introducing this article tonight. I'm going to start with the headlines, and then I'll get into the details. The headlines are that our committee has spent the last 18 months or so researching this issue, and we've made extensive and tremendous progress. However, there are several important issues for which we do not have answers, because we do not have the professional or technical expertise on our committee or on the town staff to answer those questions. So as a result, we are asking the town for $50,000, up to $50,000, to cover targeted professional services related to engineering costs, environmental costs, and legal costs for the recreational path. So those are the headlines. Before I get into the slides, I just want to address one question that I often get from folks about the recreational path. Why do we need another trail in Dover? We've got tons of trails. And it's true, we do. My answer to that question is very personal. I've got two young girls, 7 and 5. And when my wife and I take our girls for a bike ride on the roads in Dover, it's frankly pretty treacherous. We've got narrow roads, we've got no shoulders, we've got limited sidewalks. And it's no secret that it's not a particularly safe place for young kids to ride bikes. So, from my own personal perspective, I think the concept of having a safe place for our kids to ride bikes is very attractive. To have a flat, straight trail with no traffic is really a unique resource that we have in the town. And it's worthy of our serious consideration. There are a lot of questions that remain, no question about that. And I still don't know personally if this is a good idea for the town. And that's why we're spending time on this feasibility study. And that's why I'm asking for your support for this particular article so we can continue to study it. So I think most of you know the context by now. We've got a 3.7 mile unused rail corridor that goes from the Charles River in Needham all the way to the Medfield line across its 4 streets. The assumptions related to this recreational path are unchanged from last year. We're assuming that we're going to preserve the town's natural rural character. It will be used for recreational purposes, biking, walking, running. We will maintain local control in this trail. And lastly, there's a potential to have a very strong value proposition, meaning really significant benefits relative to costs. As you all know, the committee was formed in 2011 to look at this issue. It's formed by the selectmen. And last year I stood up here and we requested up to $5,000 to defray the costs of the feasibility study. We've since used less than $1,000 of that, and primarily to increase the outreach and to get more input from town members on this particular issue. So, what is the feasibility seeking to address? There's 2 questions. One, is it feasible for Dover to have a recreational path? So that considers a range of issues. There are environmental issues, legal issues, financial issues, community impact issues. And the second question is, if yes to the first question, then what are the range of elements that we actually want to put in that trail? What is specifically appropriate for Dover? Now, if the answer to question 1 is no, that is to say that it's not feasible, then question 2 is moot. And I will say that we've looked at, as a committee, we've looked at over 80 different issues and questions in our research, most of them coming from Dover citizens asking us questions, expressing concerns. We've also supplemented that with looking at other towns' rail trail studies. So what has the committee been doing? Well, we've been busy. We have met 40 times in the last 18 months. We've met over a dozen times in 2013 alone. Those meetings are all open to the public, and we thank the people that have attended and expressed interest and asked questions. We have done significant community engagement. We did 5 informal meetings at the library to get people's input. We created a distribution list to send emails to citizens. We have over 100 people on that distribution list. We created a separate web page on the Dover website. And we've sent a letter to all abutters of the recreational path to inform them and to solicit their interest. We have engaged town officials, so Concom, open space, public safety, et cetera, all of the different departments and committees to understand what the implications would be on the town. We have researched over a dozen other towns and their best practices, and we've also shared knowledge with Needham and Medfield, who are also considering this path in the same timeline. Sorry, you can go back up. So what has all this resulted in? So we've got a draft feasibility study. It's a 30-page document. Again, it's still a work in progress. This has been on our website since March, and we updated it as recently as last week. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, we encourage you to take a look through it and read through it. There's a range of issues that we address in that, and it really is starting to get pretty meaty. So what are the key findings? I can't go through everything, but I'm just going to tick through these pretty quickly. There's 7 of them that we'll talk about here. First, surface. We have not decided yet on what the recommended surface would be, but one thing we would recommend is that it not be paved. I'll repeat that. We recommend that it would not be a paved surface, because that would not be consistent with the rural character of the town. It will likely be either recycled asphalt or stone dust, which are both granular surfaces, but that is still TBD. Second, usage. This will be used by runners, recreational cyclists, walkers, and in the winter, cross-country skiing. It will not be used by motorized vehicles. It will have a speed limit of 10 miles per hour likely, and that combined with a granular surface will not be attractive to the performance cyclists that we see on our roads. I know that's not going to solve that problem, sorry. And lastly, horses will continue to be able to use and cross the path as they do today. The Charles River Bridge. This is a big question we get from everybody. Let me be very specific here. We are not going to recommend that the recreational path in Dover include the bridge. We are not going to recommend that the bridge be part of the lease that we engage with the MBTA. So the recreational path would stop before the river. Now, as an aside, Needham has done an engineering study, and they did a quick assessment of the bridge, and it has significantly degraded, the rotting pilings and et cetera. They would cost over $1 million to either repair or replace the bridge. So it's in tough shape. So it's really out of the question. Public safety, we've worked with Chief McGowan and public safety officials in other towns. The headline there is that the town believes that we can cover the public safety needs of the recreational path with existing resources. Parking, we have sufficient parking capacity in and around Dover Center. We identified 165 parking spaces in and around Dover Center. It does not include Channing Pond, Carroll Park, or the Chickering Fields. A Friends group. There is a Friends of the Dover Rail Trail group that has formed. It has over 200 people signed up, and they met with our committee and indicated their willingness to handle fundraising, maintenance in collaboration with the highway department, and community outreach related to the recreational path. Now, this is important because one of the questions we get is, well, what's going to be the cost to the town of maintaining this going forward? And the fact that you've got community groups that are willing to volunteer and fundraise to cover the cost is a very important dynamic. Lastly, governance. We are recommending that there's a standing committee that is in charge with oversight of the trail, and that would work with various departments and committees of town. It would work with the community, and it would work with the Friends group. So I said earlier that there's several issues that are beyond the capacity of the committee and beyond the capacity of the town to address. And we can't really, in good faith, make any recommendations to the town on an up or down vote on this recreational path without addressing these issues. And there are 5 of them. And I'll just go through them briefly. Just a right-of-way review. So this is looking at right-of-ways, easements, land usage history around the whole recreational path. So for that, we need to hire a licensed site planner. Secondly, the MBTA lease. In order to engage into that lease, we need to understand fully what the potential costs and risks associated with engaging that lease are to the town. Third, engineering. We need technical analysis of the rail bed. There's culverts, there are drop-offs, there are road crossings, there's these drainage swales that we need to look at, a range of things that require a technical assessment to understand what's needed. Construction parameters, we need to understand what the specs are for the project so we can actually get cost estimates to see how much it would cost the town. And lastly, we need to look at the environmental considerations and see what the environmental risks might be. So that's the summary. Just as a reminder, this is not a vote to approve or reject the rail trail. This is a vote to do sufficient research and analysis so that we can have an informed decision as a town. So as I said last year, a vote in favor of this article is a vote for Dover to do its proper due diligence, to do its homework on this particular issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hills. Thank you, Mr. Hills. Mr. Dawley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Board of Selectmen supports this request. I'm very pleased with the progress that the Rail Trail Committee has made and the impressive research and analysis they have completed to date. It is also clear that the items that they have identified for further study are critical to the full understanding of the costs, risks, and benefits of proceeding with the recreational path. At last year's town meeting, I stated that when finished, the board expected the feasibility study would be fact-based and comprehensive, answering any and all questions. In order to meet those expectations and the high standards that characterizes Dover's approach to major projects, professional and experienced support is required. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Coates?
Bob Coates, Meadowbrook Road. Last year at town meeting, we were asked for and approved $5,000 for a rail trail feasibility study. We were told at that time that 3/4 of the Dover residents had expressed a support for the rail trail. That number was based on a single question in a town-wide survey, but I think the wording of that question is very important. It asked, would you support a rail trail if it were privately funded? Now we're being asked for $50,000 more of taxpayer money just for additional studies. That certainly doesn't sound like private funding to me. We're told that this would be a great place for seniors to walk. I recently sat in on a very well-attended Council on Aging meeting where the rail trail was discussed. It was clear that the seniors present had no interest in the rail trail. In fact, the Council on Aging even declined the Rail Trail Committee's offer to provide a formal presentation. So who would use the rail trail? As we've heard, Dover already has more than 60 miles of trails. That's 60. And who uses them? Well, the trustees of reservations did a survey of the Noannet Woodlands usage and found that 77.5% of the users were not from Dover. Hale Reservation did a similar survey and found that 85% of their users were not Dover residents. It's realistic to expect that similar percentages of out-of-town users will apply for the rail trail. The rail trail has the potential to become Dover's very own Big Dig. $5,000 last year, $50,000 this year, just for studies. Who knows how much next year? Couple that with a lack of senior support, a myriad of abutter issues, no plans for protection of private property, and a very high percentage of out-of-town users, and it's easy for me to urge you to vote no on this question.
Thank you, Mr. Coe. Further discussion? Mr. Dyer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dennis Dyer, Center Street in Dover. We are somewhat unusual in where we are located in relationship to the proposed rail trail. In being the first house on the left-hand side as you cross the bridge coming from Needham into Dover, we have the distinct pleasure of being right along the Charles River, and the trestle bridge is in our backyard. And one of our concerns is that over time, and especially since the interest in the rail trail has really drawn focus into what does this trestle bridge look like, what condition is it in, what does the rail trail feel like and look like, we've become concerned, overly concerned perhaps, with trespassing on our property. And what our primary concern is that we believe that the trestle bridge has been taken off the table. I think there are certainly some structural issues that need to be addressed, and there are certainly issues along access and how we're going to get to the rail trail, how we're going to get off of the rail trail. But the problem as we see it is that there's going to be a dead end somewhere near that trestle bridge. And in deference to the prior speaker about children using the rail trail, we're all for that. But how are they going to get off that rail trail once they hit that dead end? Through our yard, probably. And that has happened a lot. Over the last 10 years, since my wife Lori and my son Ian and I have lived in our house, we have seen our property trespassed a lot. It's an easy access. It's the way that people get to the trestle bridge. It's the way that they get back to Center Street. And we have a particular situation because our son has autism. Our son plays out in the backyard. He can't talk, he can't scream, and he can't ask for help. And our concern is, even though I know that all of us here love our children dearly, I also love the fact that we are able to protect Ian. And with having somebody roaming through our backyard trying to get back and forth between the trestle bridge or the rail trail and Center Street, this imposes a tremendous danger to what we feel is our son's safety. So I ask you to consider that tonight. I also ask you to consider that the committee has done a great job in identifying some of the key issues that need to be addressed. And the prior speaker showed those 5 issues up on the screen. But I think that we need to dig a lot deeper about the issues of the abutters and the neighbors who have this rail trail in their backyard. What about vandalism? We've already experienced someone coming from Red Wing Park in Needham, coming over the rail trail bridge and going completely around our house. Now, the Dover police, they came by, they looked, they followed the footprints through the snow, and that person had checked every single door and window in our house. The problem is you can't see the rail trail from the street. And this really offers all of us a moment probably of deference to what happens in your backyard or your backyard. I don't know, but it's already happened to us. And so I think that we need to consider not only the 5 big issues tonight, but also the issues of every single abutter and every single neighbor that live and are neighbors along this proposed rail trail. I would urge you to vote no on this expenditure of $50,000 more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dyer. Mr. Crowley?
Thank you. Tom Crowley, Cedar Hill Road. When I got the warrant a month or two ago, I was amazed to see the amount of money that is requested after we had been told that they intended to raise a lot privately. So I thought I'd delve further into this whole situation and see what it's all about. Medfield has nothing on their warrant this year in reference to the rail trail. I talked with some other people in reference to the Trestle Bridge, and somebody's already mentioned that it might cost $1 million. I heard the number $3 million from, I think, a relatively intelligent person who's involved in the Medfield situation with the state, which has contaminated the hospital over there. The number there, as far as contamination and repair of it, is from $9 million to $20 million. Now, if you go back to the 1983 and 84 town report, you'll see the Conservation Commission and the Board of Health being very concerned with the pesticides and herbicides that have been dumped on the rail trail to take care of the vegetation for the trains. Now, we don't know how much. We don't know how many times it has been done. Obviously, it's several times. Who's responsible? The people that put it down. Who's the owner? The MBTA. Before we spend another nickel, we should request from the owners of the property and the people that put the poison down. It's been described as toxic chemicals. Are you going to take your kids for a walk on a site that might have toxic chemicals? It's not our responsibility to find out. The state has the ball, and we should give it back and say, you people work with it, or remove it, or whatever. But we should refuse this $50,000 appropriation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. Gentleman in the middle here.
Kevin Van, 7 Pleasant Street. I learned about this. Well, I'd like to start first by thanking all of the people who participated on the committee. I went to probably about 15 meetings, and it was only a fraction of all the work that these people did in an unbiased way. And I think they've gone as far as possible. I learned about this project a year ago here, and one of the most insightful comments was that the rail trail, and I'm in favor of it, would bring community to our town. We have a wonderful town. We love living here. But I thought that comment that we could use more community was a great one. My wife and I decided to walk the rail trail with our children. I have an 8-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter. And we talked about that with them. And we talked about that gift that Amelia Peabody gave to this town with all of the acreage for hiking. And while we didn't have those means, we could try to turn those rails into a recreational path. And my kids thought that that was a wonderful idea. And it's become kind of a civic project for our family. Last month, my daughter turned 6, and we bought her a bicycle. And I hope that she can ride her bike on this path. One of the things you should know, because I happened to be at the meeting when the police came, is that there's been due diligence there. And there have been thousands of miles of rails that have been converted into paths. And it is not true that that poses risks for public safety. If anything, it's a positive thing for the community. And almost all communities are happy that they did it. Now, we don't have enough information, and I'm not ready to vote on this either. If anything came up in this study that suggested that there were any problems, then by all means, I'd be the first one to vote against it. But the truth is that we can work out the problems with the abutters. We just need to engage one another and come together so that they can feel safe about it and good about it, and that we can do something that I think that would be a wonderful thing for this town and that we can leave as a legacy. So we've heard a lot of negative things so far. I don't believe that they are grounded in fact. And so I will urge you to go deeper on this. Let's get more information, and let's make a great decision about whether or not we should vote for the rail trail, and I urge you to say yes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Lady over in this wing over here, about 15 rows.
Deb Brown, 13 Old Farm Road. I move the question.
Okay, the question has been moved. Do I have a second? Okay, this is again a 2/3 vote. It's not debatable. All in favor of moving the question, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. The motion carries. Okay, so we will now move to a consideration of Article 17, Rail Trail, funding a feasibility study with an additional sum of $50,000. All in favor of the motion to expend an additional $50,000 should say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. This is a majority vote. Let me ask for a show of hands. All in favor of this motion to expend an additional $50,000, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. All opposed? I'm sorry, we're going to have stand-up count. Okay, can I ask all in favor of the motion to expend $50,000 for the feasibility study to please rise?
I love rail trail.
Thank you. Could I ask you to be seated, please? Now, all opposed to the motion to fund the continued feasibility study, please stand.
But that was by design, they rotated. Yes.
The motion fails. 172 opposed, 160 in favor.
I was here as your witness. Your predictive accuracy is incredible.
Just a reminder that you may want to stay until the end of town meeting because this question can always be reconsidered. Okay, Article 18, Medical Marijuana Treatment Center. That will keep you present.
Mr. Moderator, I move to amend the zoning bylaws of the town of Dover as follows. Add the following definition of section 185-5 between the definitions of lot line side and privately owner wastewater treatment facility, : quote, medical marijuana treatment center, a not-for-profit entity as defined by Massachusetts law only, registered under Chapter 369 of the Acts of 2012 and its regulations, that acquires, cultivates, possesses, processes, including development of related products such as food, tinctures, aerosols, oils, or ointments, transfers, transports, sells, distributes, dispenses, or administers marijuana or products containing marijuana and/or related supplies or educational materials to qualifying patients or their personal caregivers, end quote. And add to section 185-10, Schedule of Use Regulations, the following table. Column 1 of the table is titled Use. Right beneath it, it says 35 Medical Marijuana Treatment Center, paren 3 and paren. The second column, Zone R, there's an X beneath it, which means prohibited. The third column, Zone R1, prohibited. The fourth column, Zone R2, prohibited. The fifth column, Zone C, prohibited. The sixth column, Zone O, prohibited. The seventh column, Zone B, prohibited. The eighth column, Zone M, prohibited. The ninth column, Zones M through P, prohibited. The 10th column, Zones R through M, prohibited. The 11th column, Site Plan with an asterisk, and there's a blank underneath. And add a new section 185-10.1 as follows. Quote, temporary moratorium on medical marijuana treatment centers. A, purpose. In 2012, the voters of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts approved a law authorizing the cultivation, distribution, possession, and use of marijuana for medical purposes, including the establishment of medical marijuana treatment centers. The law became effective on January 1st, 2013, and the State Department of Public Health is required to issue regulations regarding the implementation of the law. The town anticipates that the state regulations may provide guidance to the town in regulating medical marijuana, including medical marijuana treatment centers at a local level. This bylaw is intended to establish a temporary moratorium on the location of medical marijuana treatment centers in the town to provide the town and its boards and commissions time to study the state regulations when issued and the potential impacts of medical marijuana treatment centers on adjacent uses and on the general public health, safety, and welfare, and to develop zoning and other applicable regulations that appropriately address these considerations, consistent sound planning, and with statewide regulations and licensing requirements and procedures of medical marijuana treatment centers. Subsection B, interim restriction. Medical marijuana treatment centers shall not be permitted in any zoning district so long as this section 185-10.1 is effective as set forth in subsection C below. Use variances from this prohibition are prohibited. Subsection C, expiration. This section 185-10.1 and the use restriction number 35 in section 185-10, Schedule of Use Regulations shall expire on July 30th, 2014.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made and second to create a temporary moratorium for the establishment of marijuana treatment facilities. This is a zoning bylaw amendment, so it requires a 2/3 vote, and it also requires a report from the planning board. Mrs. Sarah?
Thank you. Mark Sarro, Colonial Road, Planning Board Chair. While it requires a report from the Planning Board, I'm under no delusions about how long you'd like that report to be. So you get a sense of what this article is proposing. It's proposing a temporary ban on the establishment of medical marijuana facilities in Dover, during which time the state is trying to sort out its own regulations. This would give us 1 year, the Planning Board 1 year, to study the issue, develop regulations on this topic, come back to town meeting next year, and we would vote on whatever those new regulations are. So that's what this is. It's a 1 year temporary ban.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, this is a two-thirds vote, a motion to have a temporary moratorium on marijuana treatment facilities. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? It has more than a two-thirds vote. Article 19, Reserve Fund.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the sum of $250,000 be appropriated for a reserve fund for fiscal year 2014 to provide for extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures pursuant to Chapter 40, Section 6 of the Massachusetts General Laws, and that to meet this appropriation, $200,000 be raised and $50,000 be transferred from the overlay surplus.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made by Mr. Stewart and seconded by Mr. Lawrence with respect to a reserve fund. Any discussion? Okay, this is a majority vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 20, unpaid bills.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
May I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Gurnett has made a motion to dismiss this article. Mr. Forte has seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Article 21, supplemental appropriations.
I move that this article be dismissed.
Thank you, Mr. Forte. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Cox, thank you. Motion has been made to dismiss Article 21. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 22, free cash.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer from free cash the sum of $1,597,973 to meet the appropriations for fiscal year 2014, and that the Board of Assessors be authorized to use the same amount to reduce the tax rate for fiscal year 2014.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Could you repeat that number again, Mr. Stewart?
That's $1,597,973.
Okay, $1,597,972.
$73.
$73. Okay, $1,597,973. Motion has been made for free cash. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Article 23.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
Second?
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made to dismiss Article 23 by Mr. Cohen. It's been seconded by Mrs. Gilbody. Any discussion? All in favor? This is a majority vote. All in favor of the motion to dismiss? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Wall.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this meeting be dissolved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, did somebody,
Tom Crowley.
Tom, did you second or?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure you weren't objecting. Okay, motion has been made to dissolve the meeting and has been seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much. Just a reminder that town election is May 20th.
10:36.
And the special town election is June 25th. Thank you very much.
Reconsideration.